Check, check, check.
All right, you sound good. We're starting up right
Oh,
now.
okay. I thought, oh God.
Как в Иерусалиме рано зазвонили, радуйся, ой, радуйся, земля, Сын Божий народился. Мы к тебе, хозяин, с добрыми вестями, радуйся. Земля, Сын Божий народился. Пресвятая Дева Сына породила, радуйся, ой, радуйся, земля, Сын Божий народился. К тебе, хозяин, при праздничках в гости, радуйся, ой, радуйся, земля, Сын Божий народился. А как первый праздник, святое Рождество, радуйся, земля, Сын Божий народился. А другой-то праздник, Василий Великий, радуйся, ой, радуйся, земля, Сын Божий народился. А что третий праздник, святое крещение, радуйся, ой, радуйся, земля,
Good evening and welcome to season 3 of the Black Ibis Social Club. How are you guys doing? Visto, you here?
Hey, what's happening?
Well, first of all, uh, if you guys listen to that song, it's a very important day today on January 7th. It's actually Christmas for about 250 million Orthodox Christians that are still on the Julian calendar. So, Fisto, Christ is born. All right. All right. So, we get to celebrate
Christ is
Christmas
born,
twice.
yes.
All right.
Fantastic. Double dipping, baby. Let's go.
Exactly. We get 2 Christmases. That's why I still have all my Christmas decorations up. I have my Christmas tree and I have all my lights out. I'm not going to take it down until, the all the Orthodox brothers and sisters finish their Christmas stuff. So if my homeowners association has a problem with it, well, I'm going to remind them that it's better than me having a mosque or some giant monkey statue for some Hindu crap. All right. So for I know we have a lot of Orthodox bros in our crowd, in our listening crowd. So for you guys whose churches are not like mine, which is the OCA, are on the Julian calendar, well, Merry Christmas, Christ is born. All right.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Now, for you guys that are like, what is this guy talking about? Well, let me give you a quick little introduction to what the difference is, right? So, the calendar we use today in America and in the Western world, well, and yeah, basically the entire world, is called the Gregorian calendar, right, which was created in about the 16th century. Now, the calendar we used before the Gregorian calendar, give or take, was called the Julian calendar. It was named the Julian calendar after its creator, Julius Caesar, right? Now, the problem with the Julian calendar was that it was an imperfect calendar and it had a lot of drift. So eventually, over the years, it would have been hot in December and cold in the summer, right? That's the explanation. So they created a much more scientifically accurate calendar called the Gregorian calendar. And around the 19th century, early 20th century, they kind of like different countries and nations adopted it. Of course, if you know anything about liturgical churches like the Orthodox Church or the Roman Catholic Church, they had to also adopt the calendar for their liturgical calendar, right? The Roman Catholic Church adopted it right away because, well, it's Pope Gregory the 13th or 8th or something like that's calendar, right? The ones that came up with it. Now, not all the Orthodox churches adopted it, and some didn't do it until the 20s, some until the 60s, et cetera, et cetera. And some of them decided, well, we're not going to do it. We're just going to keep all our liturgical schedule on the old Julian calendar. And that's why we have about a, 12 to 15 day difference between Christmas, right? So for the Russian Orthodox Church and the Serbian Church and a few other of those churches, Christmas is still December 25th. It's just that on that calendar, on the Julian calendar, December 25th is today, not on our the 25th, right? So that's where it comes up. It's confusing. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but it is what it is, right? So I know that I don't know, we'd have to ask old McGinty if his church is on the Julian or the other calendar. Anyways, it gets confusing because our church, the OCA, all Orthodox churches use a Julian calendar to decide the day of Pascha, which is Easter, right? So that uses a Julian calendar, but Christmas doesn't. So, anyways, confusing. But Merry Christmas to all our Julian calendar Orthodox Christians. And for the rest of you, welcome back to season 3 of the Black Ibis Social Club. It's been a while, man. I feel like we're strangers. It feels like we haven't talked.
Yeah, who are you? Where am I? Why? What is going on here? It's so late. Like I'm gonna go to bed here in a minute, man. What
I
am
know
I
you're
doing
gonna
here?
fall asleep. Well,
Yeah,
for you
man.
guys,
Tired.
we're doing this. We've decided to do a set schedule. We're gonna be doing Wednesdays at this time every week.
Woo!
Okay,
7
I'm gonna
o'clock
be there.
Wednesday.
If Fisto can make it, I don't know. We'll see. If our guests can make it, well, I don't know. We'll see. I don't care. I'm gonna do it
Tired.
on Wednesdays at 7 o'clock because I want to be consistent. So That means if you have
Sir.
nothing to do on a Wednesday night at 7, which I don't know, Wednesday is kind of a boring day unless there's like Vespers or something, we will see you here. I will be here talking about whatever topics we got. But yeah, we took a nice break on purpose because we needed it during the holiday season. And really, we went offline at the beginning of right before Thanksgiving
Yeah, right
and
before
yeah,
Thanksgiving.
right after New Year's, right? We
Yes.
did talk about coming back right before Christmas, but then
Ah,
it was just not suitable, especially
yeah.
with uh, church and life obligations. There's a lot. There's a lot,
Yeah.
So
No, it was a beautiful break.
it
Beautiful
was a
break.
beautiful break. I needed it. But you know what I did? What's interesting, and I wanted to talk to everybody about this. If you noticed, not only was I gone off the podcast, I wasn't really on the internet very much. I wasn't on my usual Telegram haunts or my Discord stuff or any of that stuff. And one of the last few episodes we did before we took, before we finished season 2 was the episode on, Against the Machine, right?
Yeah.
And that got me thinking. I internalized a lot of that book and a lot of those ideas. And I don't, you know, I've realized that we really do have to kind of like it poses a problem, right? So I got off a Substack. I deleted all the apps off my phone, right? So I don't have Substack on my phone. I don't have Twitter anymore. I actually deleted Twitter altogether because every time I would get on
Nice.
X, it would just make me mad. There's so
Good
much
for you.
nonsense and negativity, and I just did not want to read that. Like I would open that app and look at stuff, and I would just like feel gross and dirty, even when there was good stuff on there between anything good was just sandwiched in between so much nonsense and just evil. And
Hmm.
I just deleted it. I pretty much don't like look at like Instagram that much. I mean, Instagram is probably the only one I really look at on my phone because my wife sends me funny stuff and work guys send me funny stuff, and sometimes it's just cat videos, other times it's just funny racisms and stuff, right? um
Funny racisms.
right.
My
So
favorite.
right. But I avoided Substack and everything, and I would log on every now and then while we were gone, and I would look at some stuff, Substack stuff, or what's going on in the world, and it would just make me ill. Like I just wanted to like throw up. Like I would just feel gross, man. Like I would just, like, what? So I'm just like, and it leads it poses a problem for us, right? As you can kind of tell, right? Which is we have a podcast. We have a podcast where we talk about things that are going on in the world. We talk about books and stuff. Um, it's kind of hard to do that when I don't know what the discourse is, right? So I'm trying my best to figure out a way where I can approach the internet not in a way where I'm not letting it just gross me out completely, like keep up on news, keep up on stuff, but at the same time, just don't become obsessed with it. Don't become, I have a tendency to be a scroller, where I'm looking through stuff and then I comment and then I comment and then comments turn into, 3 days of agitation. And like, you guys remember the great pagan war of the summer where I spent like 3 weeks, like writing an entire book's worth of like blog posts on like paganism and stuff, which was
Yes.
insane. Like I look back and I'm like, okay, I could have written an entire novel. I wrote like 3 The Great Gatsby's worth of like text on that topic, which amounted to nothing because it was all nonsense. So
Right.
I need, I think we need to, I think this year, in the year 2026, is the year where we are going to have to honestly kind of look, not, I wouldn't say like fast from the internet, but reevaluate our relationship with the internet. Like, is this good for me? Is this edifying? Is there a value to this? Do I get something good from it, and am I putting something good in it? And that's a tough one, right? Because it's very tough when you have events in the world like the Venezuela thing and everybody's commenting on, everybody's an opsec, some kind of expert on geopolitics and everything, and you just want to just choke everybody. So I don't know, maybe approaching the internet with kid gloves, or in the same way we approach dessert, if that makes sense, right? Dessert, or maybe a necessary medicine, maybe a homeopathic approach to the internet. I don't know,
Dilute
but
it,
that's kind of my
dilute it with
challenge to
water.
myself. That's
Yes.
definitely one of my, yeah, that's one of my, like, I guess you can say my New Year's resolution is that I'm going to reassess my relationship with the internet, and I'm going to try to be mindful that every time I post something, every time I do something, or even if I read something, is this like worth my time? Like, is it worth my time getting into this conversation? Does it make me better? Should I sit here on YouTube and watch, like, Protestant versus, uh pagan debates, or ortho bro videos or something like that, right? So I don't know, right? That's interesting stuff, right? um but how was your holidays, Fisto? I want to tell us about that.
My holiday was lovely. For me personally, it was very interesting because I actually got to rest, and I actually did rest. I tend to be a guy who doesn't like to not work, and I gave myself this whole to-do list of things to do, and just none of it happened. Not really. And I think it was just a time for me to really just slow down and fuck off. And I hung around the house, played a lot of computer games, hung out with my wife, watched some television, did some stuff around the town. And the most productive thing I did the entire break was I ran into a former colleague who is now the director of I guess you could call it sort of a historical and cultural restoration center in town. This is like the group that essentially tries to preserve all the old buildings and basically try to, push back on the machine from bulldozing everything. She does a lot with the person that runs this. She does a lot with civic life in town. So the big festivals, we've got stuff coming up this weekend. She basically a big part of the cultural and social life of the town. And her and I got to sit down and talk. And there were a couple students that I've had in class before who were there helping her out. And I've joined up with them. And we are going to see what happens with that. What's interesting to me is I can bring to the table two things: uh, a sense of how to connect different people, about how to create a group that connects people with people and tries to solve problems, right? Like, hey, we've got this problem. Ooh, I
Right.
know the guy you need to talk to, being that guy. Also, I'm able to kind of provide a vision for this. Um, I've been thinking a lot about what my town's going to have to do and what my town's going to have to go through over the next few years, the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And let's just say there's a lot of simpatico with this group. So I'm very excited about that. I mentioned on, I forget where it was. Well, anyway, I've talked a little bit on Substack how I'm getting involved in local politics. This is one of the things I'm talking about. I'm also supporting a candidate for governor, and I'm volunteering in that campaign. Possibly, I actually applied to be the county chair for the campaign. So we'll
That's
see what happens
amazing.
there. Yeah, it's really cool. So like those things kind of happened, and all I did was have to like sit down and shut up and just stop trying, and the things more or less kind of fell in my lap. So we'll see what develops from there. And then when I got back, so we had students return this week, and it's been a blast already. We're doing debate this semester, and it's off to a great start. So it's just kind of like, oh, funny. Kind of like it almost feels like my Protestant work ethic got taken out behind the woodshed and slapped around a little bit and said, "Hey, knock it off. You don't need to be you don't need to be striving so hard. Simply wait until called upon. Until the king summons you for duty." If that makes sense.
How was your Christmas?
Christmas was great. Um, I was actually a little ill on a Christmas day, which sucked. The type 1 diabetes snuck up on me and kind of dropped me for the day. But very nice having my first Orthodox Christmas. That was cool. Things have been going well at church. Went to Vespers, I think, or we went to the service the night before. I think it's a Vespers. Anyway, whatever it is, that's been great. My wife has been really enjoying that. I'm excited for this month because isn't there a big feast for Saint Basil at the end of the month?
I
So
believe
that's
so.
going to
Yeah,
be
I'd have to look at my
yeah. So
calendar. I feel like there's a
yeah, so
feast
that
there's a feast or a fast every other day. So I
yeah,
can't
it's
keep up
it's
with
it's it's
everything.
very busy season. So yeah, I've been looking forward to that. Especially at the end of the month with the basil stuff, because I love that dude, and it'll just be it's I'm enjoying all of it, and just yeah, man, that's it. So life is grand. I got nothing to complain about whatsoever.
I forgot to ask you when you got chrismated, what saint
Yes,
did you pick?
basil. I picked
Oh,
Saint
Saint
Basil. Great.
That's
Yeah.
a that's a popular one. So we
Mhm.
actually did
Good one.
the liturgy of Saint Basil around Christmas. And that's a long one, man. It's a long one. I
I
don't
bet.
know.
I bet.
That man liked to write and to liturgy,
Yeah.
so whenever you see like a Saint Basil liturgy, it's one of the two main ones that we do. That's the long one. It's prepare yourself. There's a lot of stuff on there. We usually do, for everybody else that doesn't know, we do the liturgy of Saint John Chrysostom.
Yeah.
Is the kind of the standard Orthodox liturgy. Well, that sounds amazing. Do you still have your Christmas tree up?
We actually did not do a Christmas tree this year, so it was never. It's not up because it was never up in the first place. But that little one in my soul, is always up. So,
I guess Judaism is hard to kick, right?
huh? What?
I'm just joking. I
What?
I called you a Jew.
That's fine. I mean, I've been
I'm
called
just
worse.
joking.
No, I
I'm
know.
just joking.
It's okay.
I have a fake one, okay? So like I feel like I'm actually kind of a bad
All
person
there was
too.
is like, well, living in living where I live, most of them are fake at Walmart, and there was absolutely no reason. Like, there's no way I was going to buy one of those. And I actually have no idea where to get like a proper Christmas tree around here.
Yeah, you guys are in
I mean, I
Florida.
guess we could put a palm tree up. Yeah, I guess we could put a palm tree up, but like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know.
Um, we have a fake one. We actually got it at Sam's Club, so kind of Walmart, right? And it's actually
Yeah.
pretty nice.
Oh,
It has like we just bought it this year. We used to have another fake one that kind of like died after 8 years. So I used to be one of those guys that's like, no, we have to have a real tree forever. So I always had a real tree.
yeah.
And many, many, many years ago, and okay, real trees are amazing. They smell great, but they're kind of a pain in the butt to like upkeep. There's like, little like needles everywhere and they start drying and then they become a fire hazard if you keep them on forever. And a few years ago, I was deployed over Christmas and my wife's like, she just went and bought this really nice, like fake tree that, she didn't have to like be worried about because if she was by herself, she had her baby at the time, our daughter was a little baby. So and when I came home, and the following year and she pulled it out, I was like, oh, this is actually not that bad, like especially when you have a cat and a dog and another dog. I'm just like, let's just do the fake tree. And it kind of like became a thing. And here in South Carolina, they're kind of expensive. Like I don't know, California, they're a little bit cheaper. They're like everywhere, like at Home Depot, Sam's Club, all those places, Lowell's. But here they're kind of pricey because they get like shipped from further away or something. I don't know. And yeah, we just opted for, another fake one and we bought a nice expensive one and it looks nice and it's still downstairs and it hasn't caught on fire yet. So that's kind of a good thing.
Nice.
It works out.
Nice.
But my holidays was actually really good. So one thing that we did for Thanksgiving, had a bunch of my work friends over and it was fun. They all were over there and we had a family with their kids and a bunch of other friends, and we played some board games and drank a bunch of diesel fuel and a bunch of wine and a bunch of other stuff. And it was pretty fun. Like it was great having family over. Not I didn't have any family over. I had just friends over, and we did that. And then for right before Christmas, and I'm gonna share a picture for you guys that have the live stream picture. This is really cool. Something really cool happened that I really cared about, and it's this. I don't know if you guys can see the picture yet on Substack. Give me a heads up if you see it. Actually, I can't see it. Give me a second for it to load.
There it is.
Let's see if it loaded on Substack yet.
Yeah, this was your daughter's baptism, right?
Yeah, my daughter got baptized, right? Which is freaking
Hooray!
cool. Um, yeah, my daughter got baptized and my wife got chrismated. So she finally they both became official members of the church. It was really awesome experience. I mean, we had so many, like, I, f- our, our poor priest over here, like, there were so many people that were chrismated and baptized. I feel like it was like the longest liturgy ever because it was just we were there all day, and he had so many chrismations and baptisms to do. And it was such an amazing, like glorious day. And then she obviously looks like a little medieval princess over here. And if for you guys that don't know, she's getting anointed with oils in that picture, which is really cool. And yeah, it was just a blast. It was just such a really cool like day. And it's just I don't know it's amazing, and it's one of the things I always felt bad about in the past, where like I'm like, I want to get my daughter baptized. I should have my daughter baptized. Even in my pre-return to the church, I always felt guilty about that because I was baptized as a 4 month old or something, and I was like, and it was just so wonderful that like my daughter and my wife came with me to church, and they adapted and they immediately loved it. And my biggest fear when I started going to church, like, and I found this church specifically, was that my wife was not going to like it. That was like my staggering block, if that makes sense. I was like, what if my wife hates it, and then I'm going to have
Mhm.
a divide between me and her, right? Like, I'm going to want to go every Sunday, and I'm going to want to go to Vespers and night and stuff, but she's not going to want to go. And there's people at my church that have this problem where like their significant others have no interest whatsoever, and they come by themselves. We have a few girls whose like boyfriends and husbands don't come, and then we have a few guys actually that their significant others don't come. And it's a tough thing, I think. But that was my fear. Of course it was unfounded. As soon as my wife started coming and my daughter, like, they just both loved it and they fit in right away, and that's all they talk about now. And I'm just like, I feel like I'm the less churchy of them now. Like sometimes I'm like, oh man, can you just knock it down a bit? Stop like criticizing me about my fasting and stuff. But I guess that's what wives are for, right? To like keep you going and keep you straight. But that happened in December. And then we went to a bunch of Vespers and a bunch of services for Christmas. And we because we fully became, you know, enmeshed in liturgical, church life this year. We changed the way we do Christmas. We went to liturgy at night on Christmas Eve, and then we went on Christmas morning. We went first thing in the morning. We did a liturgy at like at 7 in the morning, and so we did that. We had brunch with everybody, and then we went home and opened presents. That my daughter opened presents after liturgy. And what the funnest thing we did on Christmas though is had another family over and some friends. I think one of the friends is in the chat right now. What up, bro? We had them over, and what I ended up doing is I made sarmala. Have you ever heard of sarmala before, Fisto?
No, I have not. What is this?
So sarmala is like the national dish of like Romania, and what it is it's fermented cabbage, like sour fermented cabbage, and it's pork with a bunch of spices wrapped in the fermented cabbage leaves and then baked. Right. And it is the most amazing food ever. And I've never made it. I was kind of nervous, and I bought this like Romanian cookbook. It's in English, and it's actually a Romanian woman that lives in England. And I made I went and bought these big jars at the store, and I fermented my own cabbage. I felt like such a trad bro doing that, like fermenting my own, making my own like sauerkraut basically. And I fermented that stuff for about a week and a half or so. And then the night, Christmas Eve, I pulled everything out and hung out with my daughter, and we like wrapped, wrapped the pork and everything in the cabbage leaves, and I baked. I was up until 2 in the morning, napped out for like 2 hours, and then went to church, came back and finished prepping everything. We had all these people over, and it was a blast. And I mean, the food was so good, right? Like I tasted it the first time, and I was nervous because this is like I'm making my grandma's food here, right? And I put it in my mouth, and like the national anthem came over me, a tear. Like I think I teared up because it tasted so good, and I was so proud of my trad bro fermentation of my own cabbage, and then everybody
Nice.
loved it. They were like, "Oh, that was the highlight of the night." And of course, I drank a bunch. We smoked a bunch of cigars, and that was a great Christmas. And then my daughter got sick, and when she was sick for about a week, so we didn't do anything exciting for New Year's except watch Stranger Things. Or we watched the Stranger Things finale, which I'm going to talk about later in a few minutes. All right, but yeah, that's it, man. That's what we did. That was a wonderful thing. Did everybody in the chat have a good holiday season? Hopefully, I hope you guys did.
Yeah,
I know
guys.
some of you. I didn't go anywhere though. I didn't go anywhere like out of state or anything like that. I kind of stayed home.
Yeah, no, same here.
I didn't read as much as I should. I didn't I didn't I don't know. I really just kind of took it easy. I mean, I worked a lot for the first part, and then I took some time off. Now I'm actually off for a few weeks, and but other than that, I didn't do that. But yeah, I'm glad.
I'm trying to think if I read anything. I don't think I did either. I did do a little more family history research. That I did a little bit of. So my mom was able to find out the genealogy from the Irish side of the family. So that was fun starting to dig into a little bit. Got the name of the guy that got us from Ireland to Cleveland. So I'm going to be running that down and seeing what's going on there.
Oh,
so
that's
that was
awesome.
kind of cool to find out. Yeah, that was kind of cool to find out. I also did a little bit more with my ancestor. So this is kind of fun. Don't laugh, but I've been had watched Outlander with my wife. It's kind of this historical fantasy, sci-fi / romantasy. It's fun, right?
That's like the one where like the girl goes back in time and
she goes back in time, falls in love with this Irish Catholic, or not Irish Catholic, Scottish Catholic. They go through like the whole Jacobite rebellion and like all kinds of stuff. But it's really funny because in the later seasons, they end up making their way to the colonies, and then they end up making their way to New York. And the guy, the male lead, they end up serving in the Battle of Saratoga, which my ancestor fought in the Battle of Bennington leading up to Saratoga. And I was able to run down the militia name and everything like that. So it was like, hey, my ancestors were around there somewhere. It was kind of cool. And I mean, the show is enjoyable because it does a really good job, like with the costumes, like all that shit. So I'm watching it going, holy shit, my guy's running around and he probably looks a little like that. That's wild. It's kind of
what? That's pretty cool. I heard a lot of people like that show. It's like a kind of a romantasy type of show, right?
Yeah.
Don't feel bad. I watched like all of the Gilmore Girls with my wife a few years ago, and I really like the Gilmore Girls, so it's pretty cool.
One of the things I like about it is that it does the Tolkien thing, where like the Catholicism is just there. Like the worldview of these Christian people it's just part of the world. I feel like it does a decent way of doing that. It's the year of our Lord 2025, and all of the Scottish people are white. So like that by itself is enough for me to be like, this is a fantastic show. This is amazing.
Netflix hasn't made it like
no.
Like what's her name from the Wizard of Oz thing? Isn't in it?
Oh no, nothing like that. I mean, even in North Carolina, the slaves are slaves. One of them is a very noble guy who, even after being given his freedom, decided to stay. Like stuff like that. Like even that kind of complicates the whole thing. So it's just like, oh hey, historical accuracy. How refreshing, and then it's just it's great. But anyway, it's a good time.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was cool. So
that was
a little bit of stuff I did.
Over in the YouTube chat, Tintin and Haddock says, "Can I get a birthday shout out? A happy birthday, I guess, to Tintin and Haddock, right? 1940. You're pretty old if that's you. 85, 86.
That's
happy birthday.
85.
If that's your age, Tintin and Haddock. Tintin is you guys are familiar with Tintin. That's the old, like a French comic book character,
Yeah.
like Tintin.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
That's awesome, man. I watched Stranger Things, man. Okay, and this is
Yes.
going to be my kind of like my topic. Did you watch Stranger Things? Are you guys in the chat ready for a Stranger Things conversation?
I watched the first season.
Okay,
That's what I
something's
did.
been
I was
bugging.
one
It's
of
been
those
bugging
guys.
me about this. It's been bugging me. I need to pop in a Zinni real fast because this has been bugging me.
Uh
right?
oh. Oh no.
All right.
A Zinni. Guys, we're fucked. He's popping in a Zinni.
There's
Buckle
a lot
up.
of
Buckle
there's a
up.
lot of negativity about this Stranger Things thing going on, and I think it's wrong. I think a
Buckle
lot
up.
of it, it's not so much that the show is great or amazing. You know, I think that a lot of it is in a way misunderstood. From a to quote our liberal friends, there's a lot of media illiteracy going on here, right? And this is where I want to approach it. So, for you guys not familiar with Stranger Things, I don't know if what planet you've lived on, but Stranger Things is kind of a popular show. I believe it's like the most popular show. It's really the only thing I can think of right now that's kind of a unified cultural thing.
Yeah, that's fair to say. That's
Where
fair to say.
everybody like pretty much everybody has seen it or at least heard about it, right? It's I can't think of anything that has like as much of a media cultural impact as the Stranger Things thing. And Netflix did some really good marketing of it. They specifically broke up the last season in like three different parts where they released like 4 episodes right before like Thanksgiving. They released a few episodes around Christmas on Christmas Day, and then they released a few more episodes, the finale, like the last episode on New Year's Eve at 8 o'clock. And yeah, that's what I think that's what really kind of amped everybody up because of this cool release schedule. And I like the idea of this release schedule. It gave us something to do, like on Christmas after everybody was gone from the parties and we went sleep for the night the next day. We woke up and we're like, oh man, what are we going to do? I don't want to clean up yet. And I'm still like hungover from eating so much and from, drinking so much. And let's just spend all day watching Stranger Things. And that's what we did. And it was a blast, right? Like it was a fun family thing. Now, Stranger Things came out in 2016, I believe, the first season, right? And that was a while ago, right? I believe that's before Trump 1 happened, or like right as Trump 1 was happening. And
Yeah.
my daughter wasn't even born yet, right? That's how crazy that is. It was a long time ago. And this is the fifth season, the final season, and it's 10 years later. So I watched the first season when it first came out with my wife, and we were living in Japan back then. That's a long time ago it was. And then we watched it here in South Carolina many, many years later. And now I watched it with my daughter. Before the fifth season came out, before the first few episodes, we rewatched the whole thing with her, and she really got into it. And she finished it. So one key element that I want to kind of talk about is, first of all, Stranger Things is at the intellectual level that my 7-year-old daughter understood everything. Right. All right. That's a key element thing in there.
Yep.
Right? My 7-year-old daughter understands everything in the show. Right. Give or take. There's a few like adult, like kind of like sex jokes that go over her head. But my 7-year-old daughter understands everything, and she found it exceptionally exciting, and she loves all the characters. Okay. That's a key element to understand about this show, right? Now, if you guys know me and if you listen to Black Ibis, I'm a snob when it comes to like media and entertainment and that kind of stuff, especially when it comes to books, right? I like to read, Russian literature. I like to read, hard, obscure stuff that most people have never heard of. I like all that stuff, right? But I also think that entertainment can just be entertaining, right? So what I mean by that, I'm gonna have to make a quick pause because we're doing it late. My daughter's going to bed, so I have to give her a good night hug real fast. Give me 1 second, guys. Good night.
Sure thing. This is such a wholesome podcast, folks. Such a wholesome podcast. Our daughters go to bed. Our daughters go to bed before 8 o'clock.
I love you. Mom. Yeah, they do.
Adorable.
Good night. Anyways, so she's going.
Tell her Uncle Fisto said good night.
Fisto says good night, Juniper.
Tell her I said good night to him.
He said good night. She said good night. Anyways, right? So we went, anyways, back to Stranger Things, right?
Back to Stranger
So
Things.
I'm a snob when it comes to a lot of stuff, right? Like, you know, like if you listen to the podcast, we did, you know, a pretty in-depth episode on, you know, Lost in Translation and Under the Silver Lake, and we did one on you know, The Great Beauty, which is not, they're not, you know, they're not simple movies. You know, I think True Detective is one of the best HBO shows of all time. I like Andrei Tarkovsky. You know, I'll watch all kinds of stuff, right? So
Hey,
I'm
hey,
not a,
hey. You'll like this real quick. Under the Silver Lake. Just this week, I brought that up to a colleague at work. Was talking about it, and he's like, "I gotta watch that. That sounds freaking amazing." So I'm preaching the good word of the Silver Lake. Just
yeah,
thought I'd let you
all of
know.
you guys listening, if you haven't
Paying
seen Under the
dividends.
Silver
Yeah,
Lake, go
paying
watch it.
dividends.
Right. But there's, you know, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that we are not a Marvel crowd here. Okay, I am not sitting here, you know, talking about Iron Man or whatever, you know, and that's not the expectations I have for movies, right? And what's really important to understand is that somebody, a dimwit, somebody that's a dimwit, thinks Marvel movies are deep. All right, like that's a dim-witted thing. Okay, if you think Marvel movies are deep, you're kind of a dimwit. I'm sorry to say, right?
Yeah.
Like if you get intellectual stimulation, and there's worse movies than the Marvel movies. I think I watched that that the Wonder Woman that was the 80s one. It was like
Oh.
1980s.
Oh.
Oh my, that was so bad. It was painful. It was the worst thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I was stuck in a hotel room and I couldn't go anywhere because it was like some weird COVID quarantine, and like I had to watch that, and I was, it was painful. Like it actually physically hurt me to like even hear it in the background. Like it like like that was one of the worst movies I've ever had the displeasure of seeing. And yeah, but it's very dim-witted to think that, like, you know, a Marvel movie, or I don't know, like, you know, a comedy movie is deep, even though there's deep comedy movies. Now, in my opinion, right, it's very midwitty, you know, like, you know, we've all understood what the term the midwit is, to expect. My daughter wanted another hug. Sorry.
Oh.
It's a very dimwit idea to expect. Okay, so let's rephrase. It is a dimwit idea to see depth in Marvel movies, but it is a midwit idea to expect depth from Marvel movies, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it makes sense.
Right? Like you're equally dumb if you go, man, I'm gonna pop in this Iron Man and expect like some depth. It's like it's based on a cartoon, you know, it's like a cartoon movie, right? Like like that's what it is. So take that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that Stranger Things is not a Marvel movie. It's like a few steps above a Marvel movie, right? But it's ultimately written at the level that my 7-year-old fully understood. Right? Now, she's not a dumb 7-year-old. She's actually quite a smart 7-year-old, but still. Right?
Right.
Now, what bothers me about that is, so you have a bunch of people that are going like, oh well, the gun shooting was really dumb in it. And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's a show about a bunch of kids playing Dungeons and Dragons, and you know, um, it's a Dungeons and Dragons game, right? That's how it is, you know. Like the perspective is through the eyes of a bunch of kids playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? Now,
Yeah.
here's the thing that like really, I really don't understand about people. And when I say people, I mean guys on the right, and a lot of people on the right have like attacked this show, and they usually attack it from the, oh, but there was a gay character and there's two gay characters in it and blah blah blah, right? Which is absolutely crazy, because you win culture by putting out your ideas in a culturally palatable form, right? We know that we live in a secular evil culture, right? We are, you know, we are like enmeshed in the secular Babylon is what you know, where we live, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to make a based TV show and put it on Netflix for the entire country to watch. It's just not going to happen, right? Like that's just not
Right.
going to happen. Okay. That's ludicrous, right? But what you are going to do is you're going to make shows or TV shows or movies or works of art, right? That are either aimed for a specific subgroup of people, like some of your, and that's really much more suited to music and novels because they tend to be more subgroupy to begin with, right? So you can write the based novel or the novel that has all your right-wing schizo talking points in it because you're going to find an audience for it, right? And they're going to read it, right? But you're not going to make mainstream entertainment that is going to address, your talking points, right? But what you're going to do though, what you can do is you can get some of the ideas out there, right? And I'm going to explain to you how I think that Stranger Things has a lot of very right wing or at least based ideas disguised in a very kind of Netflixy show, right? And these ideas were put forth to the mainstream. So you said you watched the first season, right?
Yes.
Okay. So before I go into this little tiny short analysis, right? We have to talk about something else. Television shows are complicated, right? Because television shows, just like movies, are very complicated because you don't have full control. There is no, one author, one producer, right? And in a novel, you write a novel, you put out, you put out your draft, maybe you send it to your editor, the editor sends it back, you correct it, back and forth for a few times, and then the novel's out. But ultimately, the locus of control on your novel goes on to the author, right? The author controls everything in the novel. Really, same thing with music. You can put out your music on Bandcamp or Spotify or whatever, and it's out there, with minor editing from like the record company if you have a record deal or that type of thing, right? But for a movie, right, the director and the writers, there's teams of people, right? Movies are a work of, you need funding. You need to like have all the actors on board. They all need to have contracts to stay on board for 10 years, right? You need to like kind of write your show around their careers or else they're going to bail, right? You need to figure out, when you're going to film with millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment at the right spot at the right time of year, because everybody on your film crew also has other movies that they're doing, right? Or they have different jobs. So to get a movie together is really a monumental task, right? That so much of what makes a movie successful is not in the hands of the director or the main creator, right? So you have to imagine that a show like Stranger Things that started in 2016 with children as the main characters, and we're talking about these kids it was kids actors, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's a huge gamble that these guys took on, and the fact that it lasted 10 years, I mean, give or take, and after a 3-year block, and after COVID, after all the actors strikes, guild strikes, and all the different strikes, right? They were still able to finish the show is monumental when you think about it, right? Look at fiction. Like George R. R. Martin cannot finish his book, and he's the only guy writing. It's one person. All he needs to do is get his butt in a chair and write, but he can't do it, right?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
imagine having to get together a team over 10 years, locations, right? Because they used a location at the beginning of the show in 2016. Well, they need to make sure that they can afford to get the same location 10 years later, right? There's so much work to do, right? When it comes to extras and timing and stuff. So a lot of times when people criticize shows and movies, they don't really take that into account. If you read like accounts of, or like, watch documentaries on some of the greatest movies ever made, you'll see how much luck played into that, right? It was the luck of the producer, and it was the luck of, the producer being able to get the money and the funding and all the actors lining up and doing that. That's why, like, when you look at movies that are like just masterpieces, something like Lord of the Rings, right? Peter Jackson's first movie, first 3 movies, right?
Yeah.
Those are masterpieces, and the fact that they were able to knock those movies out back to back to back, right? That's amazing, and they were able to keep a consistent tone, and they filmed it all in one go, right? Those guys never went home. They filmed from the beginning to the end on one go, right? But on Stranger
Yeah.
Things, right? They had 10 years. The kids that were in that show started off as like playing like older middle schoolers basically, and some of them were like maybe in high school at the most, right? Like maybe like freshmen in high school in real life. By the time they were filming the season, some of the kids had kids themselves. Right, and it
Right.
was like
Yeah.
that's a very difficult thing to do, right? Now, so you have to always give that. So there's some tonal inconsistencies in the earlier seasons. There was a lot more focus on the older characters, like what's her name? Oh man, you know, Mina Harker, our favorite actress. Mind blanking here.
This is one more time.
What's her name? The mom in the show. Why am I being dumb right now? I lost my train of thought.
The actress.
Yeah,
Winona
the
Ryder.
actress Winona Ryder, right? Of course, there's a
Yeah.
lot of focus on Winona Ryder. You know why? Because was an adult, right? Like
Yeah.
the show had to stretch out the adult scenes because the other people were kids, and you can't expect kids to act nonstop for an entire season. And honestly, that's not even that interesting. You can't really watch kids nonstop. It gets kind of boring. So there's a lot more focus on the adult storylines, and they're banking on the seasoned actors, right? There's seasoned Winona. Now, but then the kids grew up, and then the show grew up with them. Now, okay, so
Right.
I don't know. The first season was great. The second season was kind of weak. They were trying to find their kind of voice a little bit. Third was pretty good. Fourth, really, I thought was great. Fourth had the best description, or the best the best setup of a like Dungeons and Dragons crew of just the D&D club, and with Eddie, that was basically my friends in high school and middle school. All right, I was basically a Hellfire Club guy, into metal and punk rock and all that stuff. And I used to have a really cool Hellfire Club sticker somewhere. And then the fourth season, they tried to tie it up, and I think they did a pretty good job. Right, it's not a masterpiece. It's not like one of those like, oh, it's gonna be great, but they took a bunch of characters that people really loved and gave them happy endings for the most part, right? Which is cool. But that's not what I really want to talk about. Okay, that's kind of like the easy stuff out of the way. What I want
Right.
to talk about is I don't understand why some guys on our side that are into the same stuff we're into don't like this show when it talks about a lot of the stuff that we talked about, for example, in Under the Silver Lake, which is the idea
Mhm.
of Twilight language. So what is the show about? This show is ultimately about child abuse, right? It's about child abuse, right? It is a mainstream show that shows the United States government in the 80s taking children from their mothers and abusing them, right? Not sexually, but that's kind of implied, right? In the same way, like Project Mockingbird and all those different, like, creepy government declassified programs that we know about did, right? Trying to do experiments on them, right? What they're telling us something here, right? The concept of Twilight language is that television shows and that kind of stuff tell us something, right? Which is, under the Silver Lake, right? So we have the US government, right, under the guise of fighting the Cold War, kidnapping and abusing children, right? To the point where in the first season, they even like fake the death of a child, right? And what are they doing? They abuse the children, not for some super weapon, but the super weapon ends up being a demonic gate to an alternative, demonic universe that brings in a demon, right? I don't know
Yeah.
how more right wing you can get, guys. All right. So the
Yeah.
government, right, is
Strange.
abusing children to open a demonic gate. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stranger Things is right wing in much the same way Doom is a Christian video game.
Right. Right.
Like,
And
how much on the nose can it get?
This is all explained in universe through the kids, through the children character, the kid characters, Dungeons and Dragons games, right? In the show, they call they call the monster like the mind flayer, right? And they call the first, the first monster the Demogorgon, and they call the thing the Upside Down, right? Well, those aren't like the technical names for those things, right? That's not what the adult government agents call those things, right? That's the children are basically using the Twilight language of pop media and entertainment, in that case, Dungeons and Dragons and their video games and their movies, to explain the situation that their brains cannot comprehend, right? But what the Mind Flayer and the Demogorgon is, they're not a Mind Flayer and a Demogorgon out of the Dungeons and Dragons manual. They're literally demons, right? From a demonic dimension that is brought in through the abuse of children. And this goes on and on in the show as we start seeing a lot of other elements of ritualistic satanic stuff happening in the town, right? Where we see in the fourth season one of the main villain, the main monster, right? He starts doing occult ritualistic murders, right? And the Mind Flayer, well, he starts basically like hurting, killing people. Like he kills like the cheerleader girl, and he kills a few other people. And what's interesting about that, right, is in the 80s and in that cultural milieu of the 80s that the show set in, and the late 70s, right? Because the show starts at almost the end of the 70s through the 80s, right? That's the height of that kind of culture, right? Serial killer, occult rituals, occult murders, right? And these are all happening here. And in this case, in the show, they're real, and they're caused by the demonic molestation of children opening a portal to fucking hell, right? Okay. And you want to get even more like crazy right wing thought process, right? So you find out, and this is spoilers for anybody that hasn't seen the show, you find out that the main demonic villain, right? Like not the main like entity, but the main like representative of the demonic villain, Vecna himself, which is, once again, that's not his real name. He doesn't go, "Oh, my name is Vecna, guys. I'm the evil wizard from Dungeons and Dragons." No, he doesn't say that. Vecna is what they call him. That's what the children name him to explain him to themselves, right? He is the first of the sexually abused children in the experiments run by the US government, by the secret agencies in the US government, right? And he is basically turned into a psychopath, a sociopath by these this abuse that he receives at the hands of, right? And they do all kinds of stuff. They like suck his blood, and like they do all kinds of weird, satanic laboratory stuff. And he becomes, they show him as a weak character, like a weak kid that is basically taken advantage of by, the powers that be in order to whatever, open this portal or whatever. And through him, the abuse of other children continues. But he kind of like, they illustrate this like problem of evil kind of becoming generational in a way, or like cyclical, where he in turn goes after the weak and the sad. In the fourth season, when he kind of appears, well, the first season Vecna kidnaps and basically sexually assaults Will, which is one of the main characters, right? And keeps him in the Upside Down. And in the fifth season, we see that while he was in the Upside Down, he was basically raped, right? They had this like flesh tube come into his mouth, and it was like putting gurgling things or whatever down his mouth, right? Which, I mean,
Yeah.
that is the most rapey thing you can imagine in a show that my daughter can watch without thinking that it was, what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And of course, he ritually murders and does the same thing to other vulnerable people. He kills a cheerleader whose mom is like completely a control freak and who's got eating disorders. And he kills another kid that he has all these like fears. He goes after the weak and vulnerable, right? Like evil usually does, right? Evil goes after the weak and vulnerable, right? And then in the fifth season, the big thing that sets everybody off, Will came out as gay. Well, let's look at this from like a a based right wing perspective, right? We have the government and secret government entities that are doing, secret projects where they're, abusing children to open a demonic gate so they could fight the Russians or whatever they use to justify it, right? And the evil entity kidnaps, the weakest, most pathetic kid in the town, basically, right? Which is Will, who who happens to have a single mother, a pothead older brother, an abusive alcoholic absent dad that thinks he's gay. He's like, fucking, calls him all kinds of like slurs and is never around and hates him, right? And a complete and total user of a dad who only makes an appearance when they think he's dead. He's trying to sue the city for like, not finding him, right? So he's got basically the triad of abused child, right? Working alcoholic mother, alcoholic absentee dad, poverty, everything. He's got everything that like, all the profile of the person that's going to get killed and molested. Okay. And that's what happens to him. And he comes back throughout the show and he's tainted. He's tainted by this evil the whole time. It's always affecting him. It's this evil that's like he cannot get rid of, right? Throughout the subsequent seasons after the first, he comes back, they rescue him, but he's never the same. He's always connected to the evil. He has the taint of this evil realm on him, to the point he's like throwing up slugs and he's like, all this crazy stuff, right?
Right.
And this is the kid that comes out as gay. Is anybody in the chat not getting this?
Little on the nose
Like,
there.
are we not seeing how the taint of evil has created this? Right? I mean, am I insane here? Am I not understanding this obvious thing? Right? Where, come on, guys. Like, it's like if Netflix was like, let me come up with a plot that right-wing bros on the internet can agree with and put it on a platter and gave it to us, and it's missed by everybody. Like, am I done? Am I missing this obvious thing here?
Do you mind if I attempt to speed run your point?
Yeah,
because this is what keeps coming into my mind. I think about these similar things when I see people talk about like Fallout, for example, or pretty much anything these days. We've gone from a mainstream culture where there was some semblance of mainstream standard, like a good film. There was a general consensus. Good TV, good books. Like there was a general consensus. And even if things weren't necessarily like appealing to the mainstream, you still had the fringe where it was like, yeah, that's good, but it's, it's a cult classic. You know what I mean? Like it's not for everybody, but it is. There was at least a recognition of art. Like that's, the space that David Lynch basically inhabited, stuff like that. And now, thanks to the internet, we've had this fusion-driven atomization of culture and basically consensus. So there's always going to be a million people, for every opinion, there's going to be a million people that hold that opinion. And most people are going to be upset unless the thing that they want, the thing that they expect to satisfy, if it doesn't essentially fillet them in the precise manner they deserve or they believe they deserve to be filleted. You know what I mean? Like it's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect in the exact way I want it because I live in a world of endless, consumer demand that is satisfied however I want. It's just basically we think we live in a world where we get wherever we want now, and then the moment anything is wrong, we know that we can log on to the internet and find a million people that agree with us. It's almost like the complaining and the the complaining and the grumpiness. And I mean, it's almost like that's the point. We don't actually watch things to enjoy them. We watch things so we can then complain about them with our friends on the internet.
Right.
At least that's what keeps coming to my mind as you discuss.
You're absolutely right, and it leads to a lot of like like once again, I hate this term, but media literacy in a way where you don't understand like what you're watching and you're not really thinking.
Yes.
I mean, okay, so in the chat, Tim Waltz says, "I was just welcome, Governor Waltz. I was just confused why he says I was just confused why they had to put in the show for no reason. LOL. The other dudes weren't coming out straight. Well, yeah, I just explained the reason, right?
Yeah.
So he was.
Well, you don't come out as straight. Straight is you're straight until proven otherwise.
Straight is the default, right?
It's normal. Yeah, that's the default. You don't have to.
We know that the other characters are straight. We know that the other characters are straight because they're all interested in girls, right? And they're all in boys, and they have relationships in it, right? Now, what's interesting is I just gave the reason why Will had to come out as gay, right? He came out as gay because he was, if we're using the logic of the show, is because he was abandoned by his drunken father, raised by a poor mother in poverty, living in a shack in the forest in a shit town in Indiana, right?
And then literally abused by demons.
He was weird to begin with, played Dungeons and Dragons all day, and he was molested by demons, right?
Yes.
And then he
being from the Midwest, that child goes through. I mean, I understand that character art instinctually. They just go to college instead of being abused by literal demons. But that is essentially it. Guys like that go out into the world. Guys like that go out into college. Whatever. And I mean, they're just absolutely one-shotted by all the things that promise to fill the holes in their heart created by the fact that they had shitty parents, shitty fathers, shitty mothers, shitty situation, so on and so forth.
Right. No, it's exactly that. I think out of like the Jason in the chat is right. He says, for people that don't think on this level, Netflix plus gay character equals bad. And they see it as an attack on us, right? Which is fair, right? Like there is the problem of mainstream entertainment, like making the random gay character or this person, right? Which is true, but in this case, I feel like Will being gay was not a surprise to anybody, right? They hinted the gay storyline as early as like the second season. You had the gay vibes from him the whole time, right? Probably because the actor ended up being gay as he became an adult, but he was gay from the beginning. Okay, like he had a gay vibes from the very beginning, from maybe the third season. Once he became a teenager in the show, you could see the gay storyline coming. And you know what they did really well though is they really handled the storyline of him being gay and being attracted to the main character Will, right? And if the show made him and Will hook up or something like that, I would have been the first guy to just cry foul, to call nonsense, right? I would have been like, no, right? But instead, it was actually not that at all. He's like, ugh, I cannot be attracted to my straight best friend, and he realized that his attraction was not true attraction, but a like trauma bonded infatuation, right? You could argue that the character of Uma Thurman's daughter, that she's a lesbian in the show. I feel like that isn't so much of a storyline lesbianism, right? And more to do with the fact that they did not know what to do with the character. I feel like in the season where she appeared, she was meant to die or go away. And she would have been a problematic plot point, and it would have like gotten in the way of the Steve dynamic with Nancy and Jonathan. So they're like, well, we don't want to kill her off because she's like a fan favorite, but we can't have her be an option for Steve. And they have to explain that or like do that storyline. So they ended up making her like a lesbian because it solves the Steve, Nancy, Jonathan triangle, which is a lot more of an interesting dynamic,
Yeah.
She was kind of the fourth wheel in that relationship. So she ended up, she
fourth wheel in a love triangle.
Well, she was the fourth wheel in a love triangle, and she needed to either be a dead character or gone complete, and she was Uma Thurman. It's Uma Thurman's daughter, right? And she's actually a great actress, so she's like a fan favorite. So getting rid of her would have been kind of a lame thing. So they're like, just make her a lesbian, and that I think that worked out much better. And I think that decision from a writing standpoint makes sense to me, because it kind of solves a weird problem, but it's not like a great solution. But the show's ultimately not about Steve and Nancy. It's about the younger kids. So it would have taken up too
Right.
much screen time, So anyways, right?
Yeah. Anyways,
So
moving
we
right
have
along.
those elements, right? But there's some other elements that are interesting about the show, right? Like, there's a lot of homage to, Spielberg in it, which whenever you deal with weird supernatural occult stuff and weird crap, you end up getting Spielberg references, right? I
Of
wonder
course.
why, right?
Especially
There's a
in a
lot of
show about the 1980s.
All right, there's a lot of missing exactly. There's a lot of messing around with electricity as the kind of the path for the demonic to travel, which is your connection to David Lynch and the
I was gonna
ideas
say, yeah.
put forth by David Lynch. There's a lot of stuff, and there's another funny kind of thing that there's two things that people didn't like, and I'm going to address those, and then we're going to move on with this stuff, right? One thing people in the last episode, they kind of resolved the Jonathan and Nancy love situation that they had. If you guys remember in the first season, Nancy was Steve's girlfriend, but she starts hanging out with Jonathan looking for Will, right? When they all thought he was dead and stuff, right? And end up bonding together. Jonathan is like the artistic kind of you know, and kind of weird guy, kind of a goth guy. And Nancy's like she used to be kind of the prep, going out with Steve, but then she ends up switching and, starting to date Jonathan. But in the fourth season, they start having a fallout. Like they start lying to each other and they don't meet up anymore and they don't do stuff anymore. Right. And in this last season, you find out early on that Jonathan wants to propose to her, right? And they're caught in a situation. And this is a spoiler, so whatever. You should have watched it already, right? In a situation where they're about to die. It's like a tense situation. They're about to die, and they're gonna go. Steve's about to propose to her, and then they start talking. And instead of him proposing to her, he actually shows her the ring. And he goes, I don't really want to. I don't think we should. Let's be honest. I don't want to get married, and you don't want to get married, and we don't even want to be together anymore. Right. So ultimately, they broke up instead of get together. Right. And a lot of people didn't
Right.
like that, but I like that because it made sense to me. Right. It made sense to me because their entire relationship was just a fucked up trauma bond. Right.
Right.
They just in their conversation they even out say, I don't want to be around you because you remind me of this town, right? When I'm with you,
Right.
I'm not out of this anymore. And their entire relationship, their entire high school and post high school, early college relationship was basically this huge giant death after another, this whole like misery. And that's all they had in common. They didn't have anything in common as people. They didn't have any wants as people together. All they had was this bond over this trauma that's going on in this city, and they didn't want to get married. And I thought it was really good. I thought that was actually a really good way to like end their relationship, right? And it wasn't like Nancy was like, "Oh, I want Steve" or something like that. No, nothing like that at all. It was just like it's I don't. If we survive, I don't want to do this. We need to be separate, right? And I like that. So that was one element that I liked. The other big critique is the dad, right? The dad problem where he's kind of a butt of the joke in the show, right? And what I mean is that not Will Byers' dad, but Mike's dad and the other girl's dad, he gets attacked by the Demogorgon thing and he ends up in the hospital. Nobody cares about him, and but the whole show he's been kind of a joke. And what he represents, right? He's your prototypical boomer, right? The entire time the show was going on, he was completely oblivious. He's out there golfing, monsters are kidnapping his children and eating people in town. He's just like, I'm just a Reagan Republican, right? That was to me a perfect screen depiction of the boomer, right? Like literally satanic demons from a different dimension are molesting your children and you're out golfing. That is like a philosophical like depiction of the boomers in America, right? Like that is ultimately that, right? And Jason goes, is there any pro family message in the show? Yes, there is a pro family message. Like there is great connection between the mom. For example, the mom, Mike's mom, did not cheat on her boomer husband when she had the chance. She refused to do that. If you guys remember, she was going to cheat on her dad with the what's her name, the redheaded girl's older brother, who was like, he was like the hot like pool lifeguard guy, and she almost did, but she didn't. And then she was there for her kids the whole time. And then of course the obvious family is Hopper marrying Billy was the bad guy in that season, and Hopper with Winona Ryder's character and the love of the mom and of the children. There's a lot of pretty, I think, decent ones, and there's a good relationship. I mean, you have Lucas and what's her name, which he sticks by her the whole time. So you do have a lot of that. You don't have a lot of like cheating or like really degenerate type stuff in the show, but I don't know. I thought that the boomer thing was pretty funny when you look at it that way. So one thing I look at this show is that I think you have to look at the show to truly like enjoy it. Is you have to look at the show of, this is a story about the U.S. government or government agencies in the U.S. government or whatever molesting children through like a generational setup so they could open a dimension to basically a unholy evil dimension where demons come through, and their justification is we're going to fight the Soviets, right? But that's a very I mean, that's what the U.S. government did, all kinds of weird experiments on people, like in the Unabomber and all that stuff, right? I mean, we can go off.
Yeah, it sounds like an 80s plot twist with the X-Files.
Right. But this plot is through the when we talk about movies, right? We talk about point of view and perspective, right? This is through the view of the kids, right? A lot of the silliness of the show, right? Like some of the fighting and stuff can be explained to, this is the mind space of a bunch of kids playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's their view ultimately. The point of view character for this entire show is Mike, right? And he's the dungeon master, right? And there's even like theories that like the whole thing's a D&D game. Well, guess what? It starts in their basement as a D&D game and ends in their basement as a D&D game, right? So you can even say that maybe the whole thing was a D&D game. But where I am starting to have a problem with a lot of the criticism, and there's criticism is okay, right? Like you should criticize stuff, right? Is that
sure.
The one thing that I find really important about this show is that this show puts forth ideas that are very higher level ideas, but at a very basic tier level, right? So we're exposing people, millions of people on Netflix, to the idea that the government does experiments on people that are satanic, right? We're telling people, you're not me and you, man, right? We're not talking about me and you. We're not talking about, Kent in the audience or Kevin in the audience or Tim Walt. Where I can guarantee that all these guys know what the hell we're talking about, right?
Right. Yeah.
We are telling people like teenagers and soccer moms that are watching this and stuff. We're exposing them to David Lynch level ideas, watered down, but they're still the same ideas. You see what I mean? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm thinking about being in my classroom and having, like some students asking about Stranger Things. And I'd be like, yeah, the whole government, experimenting on people to open up portals to hell. And then like, they'll realize, wait, my American government teacher is taking that seriously. Just,
right.
Interesting.
Well,
Hmm.
they're like, how ludicrous is that? The government's going to
Yeah.
experiment on telekinesis and
Gee,
a
that would be
remote
pretty
remote
ridiculous, wouldn't it?
viewing. It would be so ridiculous if the U.S. government actually took people and put them in like tanks, just like in Stranger Things, and they did remote viewing on the Soviets. Oh wait, they did, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
You'll like this. I had a very funny moment today with one of my students where we were talking about some of the things that had happened over break, some of the political events that had happened over break, and she says, "Why did we learn all that of government stuff, that American government stuff, when none of it matters?" I looked right at her and I went, "Yep." She's like, "Wait, now you know the lies." She's like, "Oh my god, really?" Like, yeah,
yeah.
all that stuff I taught you it so you would realize it's out of date. She's
Well,
like, "Son of a bitch."
the great saying about conspiracy theories, right? Uh, Most of the
Uh,
people that believe in conspiracy theories are correct that there is a conspiracy theory. What they're usually wrong about is what the conspiracy theory really is, right?
right.
Uh,
Yeah.
the biggest collection of conspiracy theories you can find. I mean, do you know where the biggest collection of conspiracy theories? Like, if you wanted to read about conspiracy theories, where would you go read about conspiracy theories?
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
Oh, a history book.
Oh, okay.
A history
Smart
book is
idiot.
filled with conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Everything, everything in history was a conspiracy at one point or another. Right? There's a bunch of
Right.
people getting
People
together, coming up
plotting
with a
things.
plan,
You could
plotting,
just do things.
right, and doing things. Right? They're all
Yes, you could just do things.
conspiracies. Right? If somebody told your average person, boomer on the street, or even your average person 3 months ago, oh, by the way, the government's planning on snatching the president of Venezuela in the middle of the night, you'd be like, yeah, whatever, conspiracy
Yeah,
theorist
whatever.
crazy, you know and then it
Yeah.
happens, and then we're like, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense, yeah, that's exactly what we do. No,
Yeah.
like, everything in history was at one point a conspiracy, and then,
A plot.
right. Now,
Yeah.
what people that are really deep into conspiracy theories, uh, are usually mistaken is they misunderstand what the actual conspiracy is, or they
Right.
misattribute stuff, and they get like one track minded about, like, you know
Yeah.
the juice box or all this stuff, and it's just like, okay, there but not
Under
there, like you're almost
yeah,
there, right?
underestimate the impact of luck and being in the
Right.
right place at the right
And
time. And it's people doing things and then certain lucky bastards, it turns out pretty well.
right. And for us, right, for us
Yeah.
that truly believe in the idea of a really a sacramental world, and the world that there where we know that there are powers beyond, there are unseen powers in this world, right? How can we not believe that there's evil forces out there doing evil stuff, right? And to me, a television show that is mass produced and it's giving us all this information, right? Or it's opening the door, because you know just like just like me, right? I was pretty, it's pretty hard to get people to like, hey man, you should really watch Eyes Wide Shut, because it's, it's got a lot of interesting stuff, or you should really watch like True Detective, or something like that, right? The best information is usually put in a pill, right? There's a reason why, amoxicillin or azithromycin or any of the antibiotics, right? They're usually powdered form, right? You don't have to take the medication in a pill, in a gel tab or something like that, right? We do that because it's easy to swallow, right?
Yeah.
So the power of media, the power of literature, of film, of television, right, is that it takes this powdered form, this concentrated medicine, and it puts it in, in a gel tab, and you can swallow it, right? And sometimes you don't even know. It's like, so what Stranger Things is, in a way, it's like children's Tylenol. It's purple drank flavored, okay? It's grape flavored, right? It
Yeah.
You can use it for your rhetoric of explaining to a normie, right? Hey man, this does happen, or this happened, or hey, you know, let's discuss the high, percentage of homosexuality in relation to childhood trauma and abuse.
Yeah. What you're describing reminds me of what librarian of Colano does with his essays on pop culture, like the Predator essay he
Right.
did, the the famous Big Trouble in Little China essay. You know, it's working from the it's working from the understanding that we live in a created world. Therefore, that world, as fallen as it is, will reflect its creator. And everything that gets made, everything that's created, it cannot help but, if you look, you'll see it. You'll see something that reflects the nature of that fallen world. Like all
Right.
this stuff in Stranger Things. Like, of course it's in there. This is the world that we live in. You look at any story, you look at anything, even the shit's that bad and is completely and totally degenerate. Well, it's only totally degenerate because there's something to be degenerated from.
Right.
Boom. There you go, guys. Like a lot of it is people need to pause and just look at it with more sensitive mind of the church eyes, is maybe how I would say it.
But that's a good way to say it, you know. And then look, we're talking about a kids show here, right? We're you
Right.
know,
Yeah. Right.
like I hope that everybody understands that half of this is a little bit tongue in cheek, right? I don't
Yeah.
but for any means by any means necessary, I do not want you to go and finish this podcast and go and be like, oh, Alex said that I have to watch Stranger Things because it's really deep. It's not, okay?
Yeah.
That's the thing
Yeah.
now. It's
It's the
bubblegum
way.
Tylenol.
Yeah, it's the way I've been thinking about it with like the Fallout TV show, and like how the ideas in that go all the way back to, the original games back in 1997. And at the end of the day, it the whole the tagline of it, war never changes. It's just all man's effort turns to dust. No matter
Right.
what we do, no matter what we try, eventually it turns to dust. And it's a it's a thing of its time. But again, still just Fallout. Like, relax. This isn't,
Right.
major. It's just pop culture, and it's interesting to see how this stuff filters through even to the lowbrow entertainment. You can still
Right.
see these. You can still
And
see these themes.
and because ultimately this podcast is about literature and film and art, right? That is our domain, right? Pop culture. Pop culture means popular culture, right? And everybody knows that the number one problem that, and I'm using air quotes here, right? The right has done in the last, I don't know, 40, 50 years is completely abandoned the realm of entertainment and pop culture, right? It,
Yeah,
in the universities and the art programs and the writing programs and blah, blah, a lot of it was conspiracy to remove the right from those two. But a
right.
lot of it is also, the fault of the boomers, because they were playing golf while, their daughter was going off to art school, and then she was,
Right,
getting one shotted by Vecna in the dimension,
right,
right? So
right,
you have to kind of keep in mind that, right? And we're not going to win any type of cultural war unless we make our culture mainstream, right? Which is very
right.
difficult to do if every little thing that we come across we poo poo, and we're not, we expect like heavy level depth to everything, right? So
Yes.
I think that we kind of have a responsibility to be able to engage with the culture. One, because with a show like Stranger Things, everybody's going to talk about it, right? It's going to
Yeah.
be everywhere. So
Yeah.
Stranger Things, I can meet somebody right now that's into Stranger Things. I'm like, hey, you know what show is really good that you should watch instead? I mean, if you really like Stranger Things, you want to watch the next, you should watch look, Twin Peaks,
Yeah.
right? It's
There you
another
go.
show about government type experiments and an alternate dimension that is overlying the regular dimension, and there's
Yeah.
demons in it. Wow, it's the same thing, right? Oh, look, and there's murder. And what is the murder of the people? Wow, vulnerable, drug addicted,
Yeah.
people that are sexually abused. Wow, very
Yeah. One of
similar. Just what a quinky dinky there, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. One of my favorite things to do with students is in a similar way. We're going to be starting this semester with Animal Farm, and I love bringing up, "Hey guys, you ever heard of the phrase 'Big Brother's watching you'?" And everybody knows it. And I said, "That's this guy. This guy
right,
fucking came up with that. This Orwell guy." And they're like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "Yeah,
right,
he had an influence on the English language that you speak, and you had no fucking clue. There is a
right.
deeper reality that you don't see, guys.
And then
Even just
they
something small like that points towards it."
And then you can give them, once they like, and if they like Animal Farm, which I did when I was in high school, you
Yeah,
can
it's
give them
great.
the much better predictive book, Aldous Huxley's,
Yeah,
what's that one?
Brave New World.
Brave New World, which I think is the book
100%.
that it's funny because when I read Brave New World for the first time, I was actually like in a summer school class, like my
Yeah.
freshman year of high school. And
Yeah.
we read it and I was like, oh, this is it. This is much better than Animal Farm and 1984, because I
You
was
know what I
like,
can do?
this is how it's gonna happen. Okay. There's not gonna be a
Yeah.
dictator. We're gonna be
Yeah.
slaves to our sins, right? That's
To
how
our
we
passions.
get caught,
Yes.
right? We're slaves
Yeah,
to
we're
our
gonna be a
passion.
slave to slave to pleasure.
It's because the fascist and the communists both got it wrong. All right. They controlled people through force. The communists, the Stalinists, they control people through force, right? No, you don't control people through force. People that are controlled through force rebel eventually.
Yes.
Give them 100 years, they'll fight back. They'll get bored of it, right?
Yes.
But you know how you
It's
control
it's way
people?
hard. Yeah,
Through
it's much harder.
pornography, blue jeans, and entertainment and football games. That's how you control
Coca-Cola,
people, right?
McDonald's.
I mean,
Yeah.
come on, the Chinese figured it out, like they changed their entire mode of existence by realizing that. And you're not going to control anybody through that. You're going to control them through giving them everything they want, giving them food, making them fat and sick and stupid. That's how people are controlled. Fat, sick, and stupid, and that's where Brave New World got it,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
very hard. It's very easy to convince. Okay, well, it's probably not easy, but it's very easy to convince the guy next to you that's also starving, that's also like working 12-hour days in some like crappy mine in like Soviet communist Romania to like go through a Molotov cocktail at a tank, right? Because they got nothing to lose, man.
Right. They got
Like
to lose. Yeah.
there's no electricity, there's no heat in the winter, their life is misery. I'm gonna throw,
Yeah.
but it's
Death
very,
can't be worse than
very
this. Death can't be
it's
worse than this.
right. It's exactly
Yeah.
like whatever. If we
Yeah.
get killed, we get killed. It's better than going
At
back
least
to
that'll
like
be
my
fun. Yeah. At least
to
it'll
the
be fun.
9th floor of the apartment I share with 5 people in a freezing winter, But
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
very hard. It's very hard to do the same thing to get the guy riled up when the guy next to you, well, he's going to go home, put on his VR pornography set, and he's got all the goop he wants, all the
Yeah.
goy slop and the cereals and all the stuff, and he's got everything. He's got entertainment, every movie and video game right in his
Yeah.
brain, and he's like, why
I could
would I do
literally
that?
have bacon cheeseburgers delivered to me while I masturbate.
Yeah,
What on
exactly.
earth am I going? Why would I ruin a good thing, bro?
Right.
Are you kidding?
Exactly. So Aldous Huxley nailed it, man. He
Yeah,
dropped that
he really
dropped that
did.
LSD and mescaline or whatever he was doing, and he went to the
Hey.
upside down, and he saw the demons, and he saw what they were doing.
Speaking of
And-
LSD, I would love to do like a senior level English course where we do dystopian fiction, and I'll hit them with 1984, Brave New World, and then the final exam will be on Ubis Will. Just be like,
Yeah.
fuck you right at the end.
You're like, and how do we beat this? Oh, the anarch, my friend. Let me talk about Junger, right?
God, that sounds like a cool idea. Actually, one of my students grabbed Forest Passage. I need to catch up with her this week and see how she did with it. But she's like, I want something really difficult. And I said, here you go. Start there.
Right.
But anyway,
Over in the chat, Jason says the church is the antidote to gooning, and he's right. That's exactly it. The church is the antidote to gooning. But what does the church do?
actually, the church is the antidote to grooming, gooning, and all of the above.
That's true.
Also,
So
it's also the antidote to autocorrect. That's very important to realize.
Yeah, because autocorrecting is also basically gooning with an AI. But
Intellectual gooning.
Yeah. But from now on, if you ever read my writing, it's going to be filled with like spelling errors and grammatical incorrections because I've refused to use any spell checks or correctors from now on. I'm going raw. I'm going raw. Like
raw dog it.
Yeah, because that's how it's gonna be, man.
Yeah,
that's how you're gonna tell that it's real writing. If it's completely borderline illiterate, it's probably not AI. So there's my writing. Right. But yeah, I mean, what does the church do? I mean, all of us Orthodox Christians recently, we just finished a fast, right? We denied ourselves something, right? And we did it because we are slaves to our passions, and we do that to teach us how to, get over that kind of stuff, and I'm telling you, man, I did the whole nativity fast, right? And it was rough. All right. So that was a good, like, I don't know. I think we started in November and we went on until Christmas Day, and that was rough, man. Like, basically eating vegan the entire time. Tough, but it made me really think about,
Yeah.
like I base my entire life around eating. I realized how much I would spend on going out and just like, oh, I don't feel like cooking. Let's go get Taco Bell, which is just spiritual gooning, right? It's gooning with food. It's gluttony. It's the same thing, gluttony, right? I didn't want to put the extra effort in cooking something at home, so I'll go get like some meat or something like that. And
Right.
since the fast ended, I've caught myself like, oh, I'm gonna just get Taco Bell. I feel like cooking, and I'm like, oh no, no, it's bad. I need to like make my own food. I need to like do all that stuff, and that's how the church teaches you stuff. It teaches you how to deny yourself things that are not good for you, things that like you might overdo. Eating's not bad. We need to eat, right? Enjoying food is not bad, right? But being a slave to those things is bad. That's the thing, right? It's
Right.
like it's
Yeah.
like you're not free if you are a slave to things that control you, right? And everything in our society, in our culture, is designed to enslave us, right? Like everything from the internet and it's like addictive dopamine traps to our food, to our, highly over sugarified food, everything, and we're constantly in a trap, right? In a way that where like, sometimes I think that like I look at those guys, like historically speaking in the church or even outside the church, the more ascetic monastic types. And I'm like, dude, you have it easy, man. Like you're out there living in a cave somewhere. That's easy life, man. You're not just constantly assaulted by like the constant slop of modernity. It's like,
Yeah.
every second you walk through a supermarket, there's like sodas and there's this and there's candy bars and it's just constant in your face. When you're like there's like Red Bulls and this and that, and you turn on your computer to do some work and it's just like you get slammed with like dopamine hits and click on this, click on that, and it's just it's a disease, man, that we're like completely surrounded in. We're basically in the upside down where everything is bad for you. And like, we're told that like, you just need to do it. Indulge, man. You're a free man. You can do it. You can do whatever you want. And you're like,
You're a
I'm not a free
consumer.
person. I'm a slave to,
No.
to this machine. Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's that.
100%.
Earlier, Jason asked, why are they telling us this kind of stuff? And then why is the stuff in the show? Well, I don't know. I mean, there's that whole idea of Twilight language. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. Twilight language is that like a lot of times it was kind of a concept of Under the Silver Lake where
Yeah.
there's information that is secret put forth where, these people communicate with each other, right? I've also heard ideas that like demonic entities have to tell you that they're demonic entities, or they have to kind of show you what's going on. It could also be running cover, like, you put out a movie like Eyes Wide Shut that basically exposes, P. Diddy / like, Epstein type stuff, right? And it's out in your face because they could say, well, you're silly. That's not real. That's a movie. So there's a lot of different theories for it. I do think that, sometimes these ideas are overall, we know that this is happening, right? So I think it's in our kind of cultural subconscious in a way. And you can
Yeah.
get into like deeper stuff. You can listen to like Jay Dyer and stuff. He talks about this stuff a lot, and it's pretty interesting. Interesting enough, for all
Yeah.
the internet personalities, Jay Dyer was one of the people that actually, I believe, liked Stranger Things also. So he scored
Yeah.
a point for
I
me.
think something that occurs to me, because I see this kind of schizo posting online quite a bit. I think people need to be very careful with that, only because it can be a distraction from what actually really matters and what we actually need to have our focus on. Because at the end of the day, anything that distracts you from God, anything that distracts you from Christ, is a problem. And you know, being an amateur historian, you talk about all the horrible things that the government's doing. You're talking about all the horrible things that happen in the world, and it's like, dude, just last century was industrial level slaughter of human beings.
Right.
We vaporized entire cities with a single bomb, and that wasn't even the worst way to do it. Like, So yeah, there shouldn't be anything out there that you're like, oh, look at all this horrible stuff they're doing, and it's like, yeah, it's a day that ends in Y, asshole. Like
Right.
that's the
Right.
world we're in. Like that's the real truth. That's the real. Oh yeah, all this. Oh, there's it, bro. Where have you been since ever? Like,
Right.
where have you been since we got kicked out of
'Cause
the garden, man? Like, what the fuck?
yeah,
That's kind of my thought. And I
it's
get
like
like
what
important, like you want to pay attention, but it can be another thing that you can easily get yourself addicted to. And then
right.
you're going down.
Right.
Oh,
I mean, one of the most popular podcasts right now, and like the most popular thing is what's her name? The black chick. What's her name? Candace Owens, right?
yes, yeah, she's a
And
perfect example of what I'm talking about here. Just shut the fuck up. Turn that shit off. Just
right,
no,
she's been
fucking
on
walk,
this, super
walk
conspiracy thing.
away.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and some people
these
like that
people lie to
stuff,
make money. They lie to make money. Come on,
Right.
guys.
I mean,
That's all. That's all any of this is. Everybody's lying to make money. So why do you
right,
think any of it's accurate? Like you're in the Library of Babel and you're listening to Candace Owens. You're fucked, man. You
right,
know?
right. I mean, she might be right about stuff. You never know,
Well,
right?
yeah,
Like I
but
said, most
even
conspiracies are right, but they're
right.
wrong about why. And I mean, look, we still don't have the Epstein files, right? And nothing's been going on with that. And we've seen all
Yeah,
these conspiracies in Minnesota, and nobody's done anything about it yet, right?
yeah,
There's all
yeah,
kinds of stuff like that, and yeah, like
yeah.
in a world of that we live in, it's very easy to fall into this kind of like trap of that. So the only thing you can really do is like kind of like smile and nod, try to find a thread of logic in this whole situation, in the whole, in the narrative, and then go to
Laugh and
church.
make the sign of the cross, man. Laugh and make the sign of the cross. That's
Right,
all there is.
right. I mean, that's really it.
Just,
All
yikes!
right.
Here we go.
Well, that's a bit of Stranger Things for you guys. I'm gonna move on to
Yeah,
that. I was gonna talk about Venezuela, but I don't really care about that, to be honest. I still haven't made my opinion about that. I think we're gonna talk
it's
about that maybe next week.
that'd be fine. Yeah, yeah, we can give it a little bit of time. It was coming up in school today. A lot of
Yeah.
people were like, "Man, what do you think of that?" Like, it's definitely it's reminding me of the Charlie Kirk assassination, where it's breaking through the zeitgeist into the minds of high school students. Like when the
Mm,
high school students pick up on it, it's something happened. There's
right.
definitely an event that has
Well, you know
occurred,
what I'm
but it's led to very enjoyable conversations. So like
right.
it's it is what it is.
So one of the main reasons why I can't really have too much of an opinion on it is that I have not read as much on it as I should. Like I said, I was coming out of my media blackout,
Yeah,
and it's very interesting. It's interesting thing. I don't know how I feel about it. Well, actually, I do. Okay, here's kind of what I feel about it, right? But this is
sure,
I want to preface my opinion that I'm not fully in the know of with the situation. I mean, obviously, we're
sure.
all not in the know of a top
No,
secret operation, right? But what I do
right.
know, I do know certain things, right? I, I know that all war is bad. Period. Okay.
Yeah,
Period. All right.
yeah,
Any type of military action outside the United States, I'm not a fan of. I think that the U.S. I'm a strict isolationist, and that's my opinion. So I'm predisposed to saying military actions outside the U.S. not good. Okay, but like I said, that's not a hard line because there could be elements that I don't fully understand about, like the involvement with the Chinese and the Russians, etc. Blah blah blah. Right? I
right.
don't understand that part. The other thing I don't like is I feel like ultimately there's a little bit too much chest thumping about it, right? Because we're talking about here is we're talking about an operation that took about 6 months to knock out, and they
Yeah,
used over 150 planes according to the president and all this stuff, right? And to me, it
yeah.
feels like a little bit. It feels like it feels like you're bringing a Ferrari to a race of like Yugos. All right. You know what I mean? Like it's
Well,
well,
I'd
so what I
say
mean,
that I just with it's a good analogy. But I think part of it is that the Yugos have been the Yugos have been acting like assholes for a really long time, and then the
right,
Ferrari rolls up and goes, "Hey, vroom vroom, motherfuckers!" Like that. That's
right.
kind of I think that's a lot of what's going on.
But what I mean with that is that like we are talking about 5 months of like infiltration, constant surveillance using all our drones, 150, we're talking about trillions of millions of dollars worth of expenditure, right? For
Yeah,
to win a race against the Hugo, right? When realistically speaking, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but if I were to be a conspiracy theorist kind of person, it's pretty clear from what I do know, based on the facts that have been presented to us, that the safe assumption to say is that the reason it was so easy was because his own military was paid to stand down, or
yeah. I
looked at the
mean,
situation and said, "This is not worth it," right? So they
right.
didn't do
Well,
anything,
yeah.
you know.
I mean, if that's the truth, and there's probably an element to that. That in my mind, that makes it even more impressive because we could turn all your guys.
Right,
I
but I
mean,
mean,
that's even like yikes. Okay,
but
well, fuck him.
turning all the guys in a shitty, South American communist shithole is not that much of an impressive achievement. Okay, you know what I mean, when you level the entire might of the U.S. military against them, right? Because it's really a situation. We're not talking about like in this situation, we're not talking about Muslims here, right? These aren't people that believe that they're gonna go, if they die for their belief, they're gonna go get, their 99 virgins in paradise, right? These
Right,
aren't like fanatical people. These are, South Americans who, are, kind of stuck in a crappy communist thing, and they realize that, man, I'm not dying for this dude. You know what I mean? Like for
yeah,
what? We're gonna die for
no,
like some ideology, like, oh, our allies, the Russians, who aren't even like who don't even give a shit about us whatsoever and aren't even communist, right? Like we're just basically like like how like put yourself in the situation of your average soldier in Venezuela, right? Or like your middle grade lower officer or whatever. I'd be like, yeah, I'm cool, bro. I'm starving. I haven't been paid in 6 months. I'm not taking a tomahawk missile to the face for this dude. You know
yeah,
what I
no.
mean? Uh,
I will happily sidestep as you pluck this guy
yeah,
out of here,
yeah.
and I'll just deal with the new guy.
There was a lot of I'm not showing up to work this day, guys. I've got a cold. There was a lot of that element of it. So it
Yeah,
looks like the real impressive operation is not on the military side, and I'm sure it was very impressive, right? But I
yeah,
think the real impressive operation was in the human intel and the spook stuff and how they convinced everybody to just not show up to work that day. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean,
And
I've seen a couple writers that make me believe that there is something to it. And they're writers that I've been reading for a while. I'm thinking of Chris Bray and Commander Salamander. They
mhm,
both had some pretty decent takes on it, which they're both very cautious people, so they typically don't just spout off on shit. You know what I mean?
right,
And it was all like, hey, it's early, like whatever's going on. But Salamander had a good point that he's like, man, like there is some competence in the military, and this should be guarded and this should be nurtured, which I thought was an interesting point for him to make. And then with Bray, it was, you've got this corrupt, incompetent, retarded competency crisis bureaucracy layered over some legitimate lethal good shit. So like there is
right,
still some, because people have been used to just, you know, the Afghanistan withdrawal, the war on terror, uh, George W. Bush, mission accomplished, nuclear weapons, like just the boneheadedness of the last 25 years. It's nice to see some things that are legitimately on our side of the world. And,
right,
and, and I don't think that can be overestimated. Again, this is all within the beautiful caveats you mentioned at the beginning. War is bad. Yes, absolutely. But we live in a fallen world and war's not going anywhere anytime soon, whether we like it or not. So, it is what it is. But like, as far as the money spent and the time spent and like all the stuff, um, I wish we'd been doing this kind of thing for the past 25 years, as opposed to flying to the other side of the fucking world and trying to turn, a dirt mound into a liberal American style democracy.
right,
Like what
right.
what
And
just for crying the freaking, you know what I mean? So this I'm going, okay, all right. And then also, it's I appreciate the Overton window shift that has occurred regarding the Monroe Doctrine. You'd be surprised, like how many people when you pause and explain it like that, and they go, "Oh," it actually represents a pulling back of American imperial, ambitions. People are trying to compare this to the neocon stuff, and I'm like, guys, we flew halfway around the world and tried to build an American-style democracy. This was on our side of the planet, on a country that is in our sphere of influence. I mean, isolationist, sure, but I'm an isolationist within the context of continental politics. Like, yeah, isolationist as in not across the oceans. You know what I mean? Like, and it represents a pulling back of American imperial ambition.
Right.
No, like this kind of thing is going to happen regardless.
Well, I think you're right there, and
yeah.
what I do want to,
anyway.
as a global war on terror operation enduring freedom combat veteran, I would like to point out that you are correct that that war in Afghanistan, for example, was kind of a shit show. But what I would like to point out that both the Iraq war and the war in Afghanistan, the early war, when the military was allowed to do military stuff, went exceptionally well. We kicked the shit out of those people, right?
Yeah.
And we did it well. And we always held full superiority over the combat elements, and the competency of our military was outstanding in both those wars. What lost those wars was not our soldiers or our equipment. What lost those wars was our the people in charge, just like in Vietnam, right? Like it wasn't, we didn't lose the war. We lost the peace afterwards, right? And, it's when we started using the U.S. Marine Corps as a police unit in a shithole Islamic country with camels, that's when things went, went wrong in Afghanistan for 20 years. The initial battles in Afghanistan, the military dominated those. The initial invasion of Iraq, the military dominated those, So it was ultimately, the competency of the military should not really be questioned. I mean, there's some, dubious things, a lot of shifty stuff with like procurement and like some of the equipment and the planes and stuff. But that's normal.
It's when the tool is used properly.
Right.
Like the military is for wrecking people's shit. They wreck people's shit. Okay, shit wrecked. See ya. Like, okay.
Right. And we weren't very competent at doing coin. For you guys that aren't familiar with what coin is, it's counterinsurgency operations, right? It is the most difficult military thing to do, right? Nobody does it well. Nobody really did it well. And nobody does it well with their hands tied behind their back. You need to do it violently and evilly to do it well, right? But we failed at coin
properly or not at all.
While we were handcuffed by ourselves. Now, the concern of the situation. So there's 2 points, right? My concern with the situation is that what I'm really want to look for, and I said I want to read more, right? Is I want to know what happens next. Is this going to be another quagmire where we just built a sham nation in its place, and now we have to Trump, President Trump's like, we got 30 billion blah 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 oil. I gotta see that first, bro.
Right?
Like it needs to, like, how does that benefit me as an American? Okay, like is my gas going to be cheaper? Otherwise it's just a Twitter post. Like I can say that too. Oh yeah, I just went and beat up my neighbor. I got 30,000 goops, from his house. Right? Well, I don't know. Let's see it, or is this going to be another it's going to be another money laundering Ukraine type thing going on in this country, right? With us in charge, right? So
you know what? The thought I had recently, it reminded me of the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the Soviets, they put the missiles in Cuba, and then eventually it was solved because the missiles were taken out of Cuba, and then our missiles were taken out of Ukraine. And only because you brought, or not Ukraine, Turkey. Yeah. And I'm only saying that because when you mention Ukraine, like if we see the Russia and Ukraine situation kind of sort itself out into a less volatile version of whatever the hell's going on over there, and then we see this Venezuela thing kind of go in a similar direction, I almost feel like we'll look back and see, this was another Cuban Missile Crisis kind of thing, where like China and Russia are getting involved in Venezuela to the point where they had to force us to act. And then they withdraw in order to have us then get, so basically everybody gets what they want, or at least enough of what they want, so they leave pissed.
Right. That's always on the back of my mind.
It kind of feels like that's what's going on here, maybe a little bit. But I mean, I have no idea. We'll see.
And ultimately, like I think there's a little bit too much made of the Russian angle there because ultimately, like, yeah, Venezuela, but Venezuela is like minutely important to the Russians and the Chinese, right? Like,
Yeah.
they can provide, like, they can sell them
Well,
weapons and all this stuff, but realistically, you can't prop up a place without boots on the ground, and you can't prop up a place that does not want to be propped up, and that's the vibe I'm getting here, like
yeah. Um,
like
I I I I would say foreign influence wouldn't have to be much in order to in order to in order to justify American attention, and also America's got enough influence and territory and concessions. Like, we've got stuff to burn. You know what I mean? So,
right,
like, in order to secure our backyard, we can afford to maybe finally work things out in Ukraine, or work things out
right.
in other parts of the world, or maybe start talking to China, pivot that direction, and whatever. So,
Right.
but again, I mean, who knows? I'm talking out of my ass here.
Right, and
So
I
it's
think the
whatever.
other thing is, and this is one of those things of, like, my pet interests kind of come ahead of
Yeah,
everything. Is like,
yeah.
I really care much more about, the thing in Minnesota with all the Somalis and the fraud going on. I care
Oh
about that.
God,
I care
you heard
about,
the latest in there with
yeah,
Minnesota, right?
I care, yeah, and Tim Waltz, and I care about that stuff a lot more. I want action on that. You know what? I don't care about Venezuela. I care about that. I care about the border. I care about, I just this is what I care about. Okay, this is what I want. I'm an internally focused individual right now, and I want stuff
Yeah.
better here. I don't really care about the freedom of the Venezuelan people or whatever. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't even care about
Well, yeah,
oil.
no, yeah,
Um, but the one good thing that is undeniable, right, is that what this does do is it kind of puts an end, and I hope this like philosophically and, like, real politic puts an end to this idea of this global, like,
yes,
order, because
fucking
ultimately
feel it.
it's this whole, like, oh, the international council, shut the up, and what I mean,
Yeah,
like, nobody
exactly.
cares about that. It's
Yeah,
like it's a relic of the 20th century. It's a fantasy.
international lull. It's not
Yeah,
international law. It is now international lull.
yeah, nobody cares. Like, there's no such thing as an international law unless there's somebody that can enforce it. Okay,
Right.
and you
Yeah.
can't enforce international law on the only person that uh can enforce the laws.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I feel like it's a little bit too fresh to really get into it, and like I
I
said,
agree. Yeah. Yeah.
like, we can talk about, like, kind of the ideas, and I think it's one of those things where, like, it's actually fresh and it's new and it's actually is different. I kind of wish we would have focused a lot. I want the administration and our politicians to focus on, Minnesota and that stuff. But if this leads to, like, a complete disillusionment in the UN and that kind of stuff, that's a good thing too. Um,
Yeah.
I just I don't want us to take a false sense of security from taking a Ferrari to a race against Yugos, though. You know
Oh
what I
yeah.
mean? That's an
100%.
important
Yeah.
thing. Okay.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
uh, just because we're able to do that and get these guys to stand down doesn't mean that that's going to happen with the Chinese or with something like that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
ultimately, that leads to a jingoism, which can become dangerous. Right. So there's that. All right. So we'll talk about more about Venezuela in the next week, probably when I get more read up on it, and maybe we can have
Yeah.
somebody that's really
It'd be
good
fun.
on this topic. We'll see. The news changes every day. We might be,
Yeah. Right.
invading Panama next week or something, or Cuba, or I don't know.
Greenland.
We'll see.
Greenland.
We'll see. We can even talk about Teddy Roosevelt and
Yeah. We could just have a Monroe Doctrine episode.
right. But
That would
next
be
week,
interesting to
for you
discuss.
guys, that
Anyway.
are going to be listening next week, Jason McGinty is actually coming on and joining us
Yes,
next week.
sir.
And Jason McGinty is our resident Kansas historian, and he runs a great podcast. If you guys haven't listened to it,
Yes.
on Bleeding Kansas and all kinds of really interesting stuff that, you can go back a few episodes and listen to the episode where he joined us, and I learned so much stuff.
Yes.
I think I've referenced John Brown and Kansas and Bleeding Kansas so many times in conversation since that episode, because I feel like an expert now. Like I'm like, yeah, I know all about John Brown, that bastard.
Yeah, that really was enjoyable. I'm Jason's in chat right now, and
Yeah.
man, I am excited to talk with this gentleman once again. It's going to be a lovely episode for
So
sure.
he's gonna school us on what he's been working on, and
Let's go.
all this stuff. So I did get some books for Christmas I wanted to share with you guys before we call it off. So I'm gonna tell you about the books I'm gonna read. So we're gonna do a lot more book reading on this podcast now. I was kind of in a, because it was Christmas, I was kind of in an Orthodox Christian kind of mood. So I picked up some books that I been meaning to read, and so I'm going to go over them. So the first book I picked up is called, and I'll link all these in the final episode post. I picked up The Religion of the Apostles, Orthodox Christianity in the First Century by Father Stephen DeYoung. And this is a history book. It's about Christianity in, the first century, basically. Interesting stuff. Stephen DeYoung, I believe he does one of the podcasts on Ancient Faith Publishing.
Okay.
That's Ancient Faith podcasting is your mileage may vary with some of their stuff, right? But there's some good stuff. I mean, our buddy Dr. Zachary Porku, his stuff is on Ancient Faith, right? So it's all stuff. What I mean by that, sometimes they have a kind of a liberally bent, but Stephen DeYoung seems to write really interesting stuff. So I picked up his book, The Religion of the Apostles. It's interesting. The other book was another book by Stephen DeYoung, and it's called God is a Man of War, The Problem of Violence in the Old Testament, right? And this one is, I think, that you might actually like a lot, Fisto, because it basically, I'm gonna read you the back of it real fast. It's also by Father Stephen DeYoung.
Let's go.
The back blurb is: infanticide, holy war, divine wrath. Violence in the Old Testament has long been a stumbling block for Christians and skeptics alike. Yet conventional efforts to understand this violence, whether by downplaying it as allegory or a relic of primitive cultures, or by dismissing the authority of Scripture altogether, tend to raise more questions than they answer. God is a Man of War offers a fresh interpretation of the Old Testament accounts of violence by exploring them through the twofold lens of the Orthodox tradition and historical context. Father Stephen DeYoung examines what these difficult passages reveal about the nature of Christ and his creation, bearing witness to a world filled not only with pain and suffering, often of human making, but also with the love of God. So it's interesting. It's going through some of the Old Testament. If you read the Old Testament, obviously, which we all should do, it's filled with all kinds of unsavory things by our contemporary secular sensibilities, right? So interestingly enough, right, I used to be very, very, very adverse to the Old Testament. I just it was one of those things about Christianity that I felt kind of uncomfortable about, and I thought, I don't really want to get into it with the people. I don't want to really like read about this stuff very much, right? But I sat through a class on the Old Testament at my church. It was actually led by one of the guys in our chats right now, right? If he's still in, I don't know. And it really, like, he did such a great job of teaching this class, and maybe one day he'll join us on this podcast, that I kind of fell in love with the rereading the Old Testament. And he brought in a lot of Orthodox typology, and I really look at it in a different perspective right now. I guess an Orthodox perspective. So now I'm actually excited to reread the Old Testament. So we'll see. Okay. All right. The other book I got a lot of books, guys. I get a lot of books for Christmas. All right. Is Father John Strickland's The Age of Paradise. And this is Christendom from the Pentecost to the First Millennium. So Father John Strickland wrote a series of four books on the history of the church, right? And the history of Christianity. And he takes a very like kind of cyclical kind of view on it. It's very interesting. The first volume is from Pentecost to the First Millennium. I'm going to start it pretty soon. That might be one of the first ones I read right now, and I really want to catch up. And I have some gaps in my historical knowledge, and my gaps tend to be in the early Christian era. I have a very good historical understanding of the church, Christianity, Renaissance up, because the majority of my historical interest has always been during the Renaissance. So, I read countless scholarly and more contemporary kind of like fun like histories on the Italian Renaissance, the Byzantine Empire, the middle kind of end stage of the Byzantine Empire. Read a lot about the Roman Catholic Church and a lot of different things, and the early modern era. I'm very like knowledgeable about that area, but I do lack in that early Christian kind of era of Europe. And so I'm kind of going to try to fill those gaps. And then I did get a very important book, which I also need to read. And this one is called On the Incarnation by Saint Athanasius. It's kind of you must read if you're a Christian kind of book, right? Sorry, Fisto. I know you missed some of the stuff. But On the Incarnation, Saint Athanasius is basically about the incarnation of Christ and the theology behind it. It's an old, I mean, he wrote it. I forgot what century he wrote this in. But it's a little short, it's almost like a little pamphlet, right? It's like but it's, I need to brush up. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna have to do that. And then the last book that I got that I am actually been very much looking forward to, and I actually did not get this one for Christmas. I got it before. I've just been sitting on my desk for a while and I haven't got around to it. Is Father Alexander Schmemann's For the Life of the World. All right. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Alexander Schmemann. He was the dean of St. Vladimir's seminary for like 30 years. And he's one of those like instrumental figures in American Orthodoxy. He was a Russian, he was Russian born. His family left Russia during the early years of the Soviet Revolution, ended up in Paris. And from Paris, he moved to the United States, where he became the dean of the St. Vladimir Seminary. Important stuff. Everything I've read from him, I've really liked. My own priest, he basically quotes him nonstop, and I've heard, he's read numerous, things by him to us during his homilies. So I feel like I really, really, really should read this book, and it's called For the Life of This World. And it's one of those books that I think every Orthodox Christian should read. Fisto crashed again, but that's the 4 books I've got. So I'm going to actually take 1, 2, 3, 5 books, right? So I've got a few things to read this month. I'll probably do some episodes on those and put some of my thoughts on that. I don't know. Should we wait for Fisto or should we call it a night? I don't know. Let's see. If you guys have any quick questions while Fisto jumps in here, feel free to ask him real fast. But that's kind of the idea right now. For the next year, we're going to be doing this show every day, every Wednesday at 7:00. I'm going to do it live. And then for you guys that didn't hear the whole thing, I don't know what that was.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Oh, thank the Lord. Yeah, internet crapped out. Sorry about that, buddy.
Oh, it's okay. Okay.
Yes, hello.
Oh, well, I just read the books I'm going to read.
Perfect. Yes, right. I didn't want anybody to think I've been Maduro'd. So
yeah. No, it's okay. You're fine. But yeah. So I'm gonna read these books, and I'll probably talk about them. I'll probably write about them on the Substack. You got anything to read? Are you reading anything new? Any plans?
Yes. So I'm going to dig back into Understanding Media by Marshall McLuhan. I've been really enjoying that book a lot. I'll have to tell you about how it relates to liturgy. I don't know if we've had that conversation yet, but there's things in there that made me realize. So that's great. I've got family history stuff I got to do. And then next paycheck, I'm going to finish up the rest of the Revelation Space trilogy. I'm very excited about the second book because it inspired other science fiction that I've enjoyed very much. So I'm going
I
to be looking
haven't read
forward
that yet.
to.
I did finish.
Yeah.
I did finish Chasm City.
Yes, that was the novella, right? The
No, it
shorter
was like
one.
the side novel. It was pretty long. It
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
full length novel.
yeah. It's kind of like a
but
cyberpunk sort of thing, wasn't it?
yeah, I liked it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. So I'm going to do that. Yeah, we'll just go from there. I think I'll have those two on my list and just go from there.
Yeah. I have a lot of fiction to read also that's just kind of building up in on my Kindle and on my desk. I don't know if I should tell you guys this, but I did get Brad Kelly's new book. It's sitting on my desktop right now, unreleased yet. And if you guys aren't familiar with Brad Kelly, he was a previous guest. He runs his own podcast where he does like a lot of indie books and a lot of like kind of weird esoteric stuff. He used to be the co-host of The Art of Darkness, and he's one of my favorite people on Substack, and just in like in the whole sphere of in like our conversation. And I've been looking forward to reading. He's been talking about this book that he finally finished and he's ready to put out pretty soon. He's been talking about it for a while now. He talked about it in our last episode where he came on. And I'm actually this is the one about like the underground tunnels in Detroit and stuff. And I'm real excited to read it. So actually, I'm going to email it to you too, Fisto. So you can
let me know. We'll check it out. We could do. Hey, we should get him back on. Talk about his book.
Oh yeah, no. I'm already. It's already in the works. It's already in the works. And we got Jason coming. We've got the Pylum Press guys coming on pretty soon. We're squaring off the dates. They've got a bunch of new books coming out, and one of the Pylum Press authors, my favorite like independent fantasy writer, Schuyler Hernstrom, if you guys are familiar with his stuff, this guy's a master. I mean, he writes better fantasy swords and sorcery stuff than anybody. He wrote a book that's going to be coming out pretty soon that I had the chance to read in parts because it wasn't done when he sent me all the stuff. And it is a masterpiece, guys. First, it's funny, but it's the most based, funniest book I've ever read. And when that comes out, I'm going to give him a 7-hour episode because like I have so much to talk about the stuff he wrote. And I'm excited about that. We're going to have a lot more guests because you guys are probably going to be tired of me and Fisto just talking the whole time. Right. But I think that's it for today, man. About good for you.
Cool. Yeah. Perfect.
Everybody good? We had a good time.
Pleasure.
All right. All right. So if you guys enjoyed listening to the show, please subscribe to us on Substack. If you're not already subscribed, I'm assuming most of you are. If you guys really want to support us, subscribe with the payment option. That money it doesn't go into me partying. I think the check I sent Fisto was like $37 after
spend it all in one place.
I don't spend it all in one place, right?
Already gone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Daddy. Wait, what?
And then I think I did the finances for the podcast, and I'm like squarely in the red, because this stuff costs. I mean, it costs money. StreamYard costs like $500. My internet costs money. All this stuff costs money. So it just is, but this is fun. I love doing it. But any money you guys can throw us in the subscription is much appreciated. And we're going to have some like exclusive only episodes, right? We're going to keep these episodes for free because we love you guys. But we are going to be doing our movie episodes and our book episodes that are going to be probably behind a paywall because we do need to encourage you guys to come, throw us some of that fiat currency or whatever, that imaginary money our way because it might not be real, but it's real to me. Right?
I could buy a cheeseburger with it. It's real enough for me.
Yeah, I need that Wendy's breakfast sandwich. But so I would much appreciate it tomorrow when I put this episode out on Substack and YouTube and everywhere. I would very much love it if you guys hop on and just like and share it. Okay, even if you've enjoyed it, just go ahead and hit a like, share it, subscribe to our YouTube. I don't really go on a YouTube. I know there's some people that listen to it on YouTube exclusively. I don't really go on YouTube very much, but I still would appreciate the subscription on YouTube because it does raise our profile, right? Even with thing, I think they completely like block us and demonetize us on there. It's probably my fault because I do something weird, but I really care mostly about Substack though. But we really, we really should raise the profile of this podcast because we want it to be there and we want it to be shared and we want lots of people listening and we want these conversations to go on, right? I want people to come in here and tell me how I'm wrong for thinking that Will Byers being gay is not that big of a deal. Right? We haven't had a troll in a while. Where's our troll at? Where's she at?
Huh?
Our troll
What?
didn't join us tonight. My favorite troll. You don't talk about
that. I can't remember. Was it that one lady who like went off that one night?
Yeah, I miss her. I thought she was going to be
Wow.
on here. I'm kind of hurt. She kind of hurt me. She didn't fight with anybody, but yeah.
I'm sure you'll be
So
all right. I'm sure you'll be all
like,
right.
share, subscribe, and then next week, same time, 7:00 Wednesday, 7:00 Eastern time, we will have Mr. Jason McGinty, and we're going to talk about his podcast. We're actually, what I really want to talk about, Jason, is. If you guys know, we talked in the last episode. Jason is also an Orthodox Christian, and he is a historian of Kansas. And what I really want to talk about is a topic that's kind of been back and forth in my own personal real life circles, which is the Orthodox Church in America, right? And how do we square like old American traditions with the Orthodox Church? What is worth keeping from, traditional American, culture and, like the South and that kind of stuff. I know we watched, Jason shared a video of Father Turbo, which I found very interesting. I want to talk about that a little bit, and we'll share that video. And I want to talk about that stuff because it's very interesting to me as an Orthodox Christian, as an American. I guess I'm an American and I'm a combat veteran for America, right? But in a way, I can't talk with just you about it, Fisto, right? And the reason I can't talk with just you about it, Fisto, is because I'm not a born American. I'm a naturalized American, and I'm not going to sit here and lecture Americans on Americanisms, and I'm not going to ever do that, right? Because, like I said, I don't have that right. I don't see it as my right to, So, but I'm very much interested.
You know what's funny about that is that I'm a cradle American, but you're a cradle Orthodox. So we kind of meet in the middle there.
That's true. That's true, right?
So
that is true. So that's actually an interesting
fun conversation. Right? Yeah, I've thought about that a lot myself. I've thought about that a lot myself as a descendant of pilgrims who converted. It's like, yikes. Well, what's up, guys? Here we are.
But I will tell you guys, while I am, theoretically on paper a cradle Orthodox, right? Because I was baptized like, 1983, right? I am actually not. I didn't stay Orthodox my entire life. I became kind of, I didn't because my family didn't really go to church much. And it wasn't until recently that I returned to the church. I mean, like I said earlier in the episode, my daughter just got baptized and she's 7, but it wasn't until then that happened. And so I have an interesting perspective, I guess. Like I'm kind of a little bit of all sides, but I still, like I said, I can't lecture Americans on Americanisms because not only am I foreign born, I mean, like I'm a very Americanized person, but I grew up in California, so that's pretty much not being American, even if I was born there, So
I'm from Ohio, so I'm as American as you get.
Right.
Straight up, right to the throat, American.
Okay, you know what? Before we go, because this is a conversation that we were having at church today. What is a traditional Ohio thing? Like, what would be an Ohio thing? What would you say? Like, if you had to pick an Ohio tradition, what would it be?
Traditional Ohio thing. You mean like a food or like music? Or
like something you bring into the church.
Oh, something that I bring into the church. What do you mean?
Like if you were to make, let's say, like I want to make our church a little bit more Ohio. What deep Ohio tradition would you bring into the church? Do you guys have
pie?
Any traditions?
Probably pie.
Pie?
Yeah, some kind of pie. Like an apple pies or like pumpkin pie or like something like that. As far as like any kind of feast stuff or anything, at least when I was growing up, it'd be a lot of like meat and potatoes and like sauerkraut, stuff like that. I mean, like very Germanic,
okay.
Irish, like probably corned beef. Actually, yeah, corned beef was the thing up in Cleveland. Like that's the thing everybody ate. So stuff like that.
Yeah, so Irish kind of stuff, right? Scots
Yeah,
Irish kind of
Irishy,
stuff.
Irish, German, things. Yeah, things of that nature.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Polish food, a lot of Polish food.
Protestant stuff.
Yeah, basically, a lot of
Not
sauerkraut,
welcome.
brats, like stuff like that. Yeah, it'd be a lot of that.
Yeah.
John Brown.
How about
Nobody
any
was
like
talking about John
cultural
Brown.
practices? What would you say is a cultural practice in
Going to
Ohio?
space. A lot of astronauts from Ohio.
Yeah,
Becoming
but
president of
yeah,
the
yeah,
United
but we already
States.
got
We
that.
got a lot of
Like the
those. We got a lot of
Orthodox
those.
Church, Orthodox Christians were the first people in space. We already won that one.
That's true. Well, we were the
Yuri
first ones on the
Gagarin.
moon. We were the first ones on the moon, so eat shit. Just kidding.
Yeah, but
Um,
Russian Orthodox brought icons into space, and there's actually like
nice.
there's icons on the space station right now. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, come up with some stuff. Think about this stuff. All right, I really want to think
Ohio
about
stuff,
like
man.
what will what will the American Orthodox Church look like in 100 years from now? Like will we differentiate ourselves from the kind of ethnic Greek or Russian or Serbian kind of thing? Are we going to take on American kind of elements? I mean, I
That's
think we already do. I mean, the fact that we sit here and read and discuss books a lot more than Europeans do tends to be a very American thing. The fact that we argue and I guess conspiracy theories are part of Eastern European culture, but there's a lot of things that we do. We probably drink more coffee than the other churches do.
yeah.
Russians don't really drink coffee.
I bet nature's going to play a much bigger role. And what I mean by nature is, I mean like the natural beauty of North America,
Right.
like
But yeah,
having monasteries up in the mountains or like monasteries out in the plains, like it's gonna, or like out in the deserts. Like you're gonna have things very much. You're gonna have things that are very much influenced by the environment.
right.
To like an extreme. Like I'm thinking of like the Sierra Nevada, and like somebody was um, bringing up Teddy Roosevelt. I'm basically picturing like Teddy Roosevelt with an Orthodox beard wandering around the forests. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing, like
Yeah.
hunting and like doing all the Teddy stuff, but he's got like icons and shit.
Okay.
Like probably something like that. Probably something like that. Or coming from the other direction, like Saint Olga, like up in Alaska, and like that stuff. Like I don't know, man.
Right.
I think it's gonna be weird. I think it's gonna be really weird looking.
That's that's
It's gonna
that's
be,
that's
it's gonna be
that's what
something else.
that's what I want to talk about, Jason. Okay, I want to talk about.
Yeah, I got to really think about that.
I really want to talk about American identity, right? How our American identity is, especially us living in the South, we are connected to the Civil War, and we're connected to the John Brown stuff and everything. We're connected with that, and I want to talk about us, you know, converting to in a way and accepting this uh the correct faith, right? But through a package that is in a way, like, we can't deny its somewhat foreignness to the Americas. And how do we deal with the dichotomy of how do we deal with the idea of like nationalism, patriotism, local cultures versus our universal, because ultimately, in my opinion, the nation I belong to is the kingdom of God, right? That's what I care about. That's my number one priority, right? But I do want to talk about these kind of ideas, and I think that would be a very interesting thing to talk to a
Mm,
historian of the Civil War era South and Midwest. So if
yeah.
you're up for that, Jason, that's what I want you to prepare for, because that's going to be my topic. I'm going to prepare for that, and of course, I want to hear what else. Yeah, and your podcast has been just killing it lately, so we can talk about that too. But all right, guys, it was a wonderful return to the show. Season 3, episode 1 is over. I hope you guys have a fantastic night. I love you guys. Sleep well, dream well, and we will talk next week. And let me know what you thought about the episode on the chat tomorrow. Okay. Good night, guys. Good night, Fisto.
Good night, buddy.
Sleep
Thanks for
well,
hanging with us, guys.
for sure.